Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is, what if Naruto was reborn as Bardock's son and became the strongest Saiyan on Earth? Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic, then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Planet Vegeta. Tonight was the happiest moment for Saiyan and Bardock. Saiyan had just given birth to a healthy baby boy, and a quiet sense of relief replaced the tension that had gripped the room. Bardock stood by, watching as the doctors carefully examined his newborn son, making sure the baby was in perfect condition and checking his power level. Bardock, a low-class Saiyan, tall and muscular, with unkempt black hair that spiked out wildly, had 3 bangs hanging to the right of his forehead and 2 to the left. A rough scar ran down his left cheek. Like all Saiyans, he had a tail covered with brown fur, wrapped around his waist. He was wearing dark blue and green battle armor, dark blue combat pants, long red armbands with matching leg warmers, and black and green boots. He couldn't help but feel proud. His son was healthy. That was what mattered most. But he waited for the final words from the doctors. Saiyan, his beautiful wife, also a low-class Saiyan, lay in the hospital bed completely, her body still recovering from the birth. She was a woman of average height, but her voluptuous body made her stand out. Her wide child-bearing hips held a juicy plump doughy. Her double D-cup beasts rose and fell gently as she breathed. With her pale skin, dark eyes, and long shaggy black hair, Saiyan had a softer look compared to her husband. She glanced over at Bardock, her eyes filled with warmth as she watched him. He might not show it outwardly, but Saiyan could tell he was proud of their son. Bardock leaned in and kissed her lips. Saiyan kissed back, savoring the moment. Breaking the kiss, Bardock silently thanked his wife for giving him the greatest joy of being a father. P-Power L level 4000. The doctor stuttered, staring at his scouter in disbelief. He adjusted it and checked again, but the result was the same. His hands trembled slightly as he looked over at the other doctors, all of whom were equally shocked. Without delay, they hurried over to inform the parents. What? Both Bardock and Saiyan shouted in unison, their eyes widened in surprise. A low-class Saiyan was born with a high power level that was unheard of. Saiyan's shock quickly turned into pride, her chest filled with happiness at the thought of their son's potential. Bardock, however, felt different. He felt pride but at the same time fear for his son. If the king hears about this, he'll kill my son, Bardock thought, his expression darkening. He glanced at his sleeping newborn through the glass of the incubation chamber. His son, so small and vulnerable, held so much power. The doctors, who were low-class Saiyans like Bardock, exchanged uneasy looks. They knew what was running through his mind. Bardock had witnessed something 3 years ago, something he never shared with anyone. He had been in the wrong place at the wrong time, saw King Vegeta's heinous act upon Broly, son of a middle-class Saiyan Paragus. Broly was born with a much higher power level, 5 times higher than Prince Vegeta's power. Bardock had watched in horror as the king's jealousy led to a brutal decision. Paragus' son was sent away to his death. It was a secret Bardock had kept ever since. Bardock clenched his fists at the memory, his knuckles turning white. "We can't let anyone know," Bardock muttered, his voice low but heard by the doctors. The doctors understood and nodded. They, too, didn't want the king to know. The last time they did, a child suffered the consequences. They would never speak a word of this night. Soon after, Bardock and Saiyan left the hospital and headed home with their newborn son, who slept safely in the incubation chamber, being carried by Bardock's arms. Despite just giving birth only an hour ago, Saiyan had already begun to recover, thanks to the natural healing power of the Saiyan body. Her strength was returning quickly, but she still felt exhaustion all over her body and mind. As they entered their modest home, Jine stretched her arms and let out a long yawn. "I'm so tired," she said, glancing at her baby boy. "Good night, little one," she whispered, then turned to Bardock. "Good night, dear." Bardock gave her a smile, but his mind was filled with thoughts. Jine smiled at him before going into their bedroom, fell into sleep the moment his body hit the bed. But that night, Bardock couldn't sleep. His mind was restless. Instead of following his wife to bed, he stayed in their son's room. He pulled up a chair and sat down beside the incubation chamber, staring at the tiny figure who submerged peacefully asleep. He leaned back in the chair, letting out a sigh. What should he do about his son? How could he protect him from the paranoid king? Hours passed, and still, Bardock sat there, deep in thought. The next morning Jine woke up by the warm light of the morning sun. She stretched her body, looked beside her and found Bardock wasn't there. Confused, she rose and immediately made her way to their son's room. Motherly instinct kicked in. She needed to see her son. When she entered, she found Bardock sitting silently by the incubation chamber, deep in his thoughts. "Bardock," she called her husband. "What are you doing here? Is everything okay?" Bardock turned toward her. He looked tired. "Yeah, I'm fine." He moved to her and kissed her. Jine kissed him back, but her concern didn't fade. "You were up all night, weren't you?" she asked, noticing the tiredness in his eyes. "What were you thinking about?" Bardock glanced back at their son, his face gaining a serious demeanor. "Our son was born with a power level far higher than that of a high-class Saiyan child," he said in concern. Jine's concern only grew more. "What are you saying, Bardock? Why are you looking so worried? Aren't you proud of our son?" "I am proud," he snapped. Jine flinched. Bardock quickly realized his mistake and comforted his wife in a tight hug. But Jine wanted answers. He looked into her eyes and, after a moment, finally decided to tell her his concern. Jine gasped in shock, her stomach twisted, and she felt sick. She couldn't imagine that happening to their son. If King Vegeta finds out about our son's power level, it could mean his death or worse. "We can't risk it, Jine." What are you saying?" Jine asked again, her voice trembling slightly. Bardock turned back and looked at the incubation chamber. "We need to send our son away. Far away from King Vegeta's sight." Jine's eyes widened in shock. "No," she shouted. "We're not just going to abandon our son. He's just a baby." Bardock shook his head. "I'm not saying we'll send him right now. We'll wait a year or two maybe. But we have to think ahead, Jine." Jine's fists clenched, her instincts screaming at her to protect her son. "And what if you're wrong? What if we can keep him safe here?" she demanded. "There has to be another way, Bardock." "There isn't." Bardock's voice was firm. "You've not seen what King Vegeta did to Paragus' son. That boy was just like our son, born with a power that terrified the king. We can't risk the same fate." Over the next few hours, Bardock and Jine argued bitterly. Bardock tried to make her understand, but Jine, with her maternal instincts in overdrive, couldn't bear the thought of sending her child away. "I don't know if I can do this," she whispered, her voice shaking. Bardock's expression softened. He reached out, placing a hand on her shoulder. "I don't like it either, Jine. But we don't have a choice." Jine looked at her husband, her eyes filling with tears. "We haven't even named him yet." Bardock's gaze softened, and they looked back at their son. "Nardoc," Jine whispered. "Let's name him Nardoc." Bardock nodded, accepting the name, watching their son, knowing that they would have to make the hardest decision of their lives in the near future. A week passed, and suffice it to say, their lives had changed. Both Bardock and Jine were still deeply concerned, but they had no choice but to act as if everything was normal. They didn't want anyone to raise unnecessary concerns and attention to them. Jin, although relieved that they had time before making any drastic decisions, hoped that maybe, just maybe, they wouldn't have to send her son away as Bardock planned. She prayed that something would change and that they would find another way. Two Saiyans were heading toward Bardock's home, Selipa and Bardock. Selipa, Bardock's sister-in-law, was a voluptuous woman with an athletic figure. Like Jin, she had an average height but slightly. She had double D-cup breasts and wide hips held her fat doughy. With a cropped spiky bangs hairstyle, she wore black shoulderless battle armor over a pink, high-collared monokini bodysuit. Her tight outfit clung to her body, and her jiggling meat caught the eyes of every male passerby, causing them to do double takes. Bardock, Bardock's older brother, looked similar to him and mirrored his brother's muscular build but a bit taller. As they approached the house, Selipa and Bardock rang the bell, and soon both Jin and Bardock greeted them with open arms. Selipa, Bardock, Jin exclaimed, hugging her sister-in-law warmly. As Selipa hugged Jin back, she couldn't help but cop a feel of Jin's fat. "Look at that baby mama you've got there," she teased, causing Jin to blush. "Oh, hush," Jin replied. Selipa smirked, her purple eyes filled with mischief. "And those tits are full of milk. Hope you've got some for us, girl." Both brothers laughed at how easily Jin was teased by Selipa. "Enough of that, Selipa," Bardock chuckled. "I want to see my nephew." "Yeah, where is the baby?" Selipa agreed, as excited as her husband. Bardock and Jin exchanged a quick glance as they led their family to their son's room. Entering the room, they approached the incubation chamber, and Selipa's eyes lit up with stars as she gazed at the baby. "He's so cute," she exclaimed. "Look how healthy he is." Jin smiled proudly. "Tell me about it. It took me hours to push him out. It was almost like he didn't want to come out." Both males chuckled at that. Bardock leaned closer, his gaze fixed on the baby. His small face resembled a long-deceased man in their family, and Bardock's eyes widened as he looked at his newborn nephew. "He looks a lot like our grandfather." Baby Bardock looked healthy. His hair, a dark reddish-brown, stood firmly upwards, two bangs sticking out in a downward V shape. His tail, wrapped comfortably around his body, matched the reddish-brown hue of his hair, making him look unique. "Think of baby Vegito." Selipa tilted her head. "No kidding," she exclaimed. "It's almost spooky how similar he looks. Like the old man is reborn or something." "We noticed it too," Bardock said, "though I have no idea where he got that hair color from. None of our family members ever had that color. His tail is also reddish-brown like his hair instead of brown like all Saiyans." Jin chuckled softly, "But it suits him." Everyone agreed. The baby sure looked very unique. Selipa turned to the new parent. "What's his name?" "We named him Bardock," Bardock and Jin said proudly. Selipa clapped her hands together. "Bardock, I love it. He's going to be something special, I can feel it." Bardock turned on his scouter. "What's his power level?" he asked. Bardock and Jin stiffened but didn't interfere as the scouter scanned the baby. Selipa and Bardock were their closest family and allies they had grown up with since childhood. They have complete faith in them. Suddenly, Bardock froze, his eyes filled with disbelief. Selipa noticed it too as she checked her own scouter, and the couple stared at the results, eyes wide. The power level they were seeing was so high that something should be impossible for a newborn, especially one from a low-class family. What the? Bardock stuttered. This can't be right." Selipa gasped, looking between Jin and Bardock. A power level this high. Bardock and Jin both decided it was time to explain everything to them. Bardock told them about Paragos and his son Broly, and what the king did to them. "That's why we're keeping it a secret. If King Vegeta finds out about his power level, he will do everything in his power to kill our son. Selipa's playful demeanor gone, placed a hand on Jine's shoulder. You're right to keep it secret. Bardock nodded, stepping closer to his brother. We're with you, Bardock. Whatever you need, we've got your backs, no matter what. And we'll help you however we can. Both Jine and Bardock felt a wave of relief wash over them. At least they weren't alone. With Selipa and Bardock's support, they knew protecting their son would be much easier. Soon the group left little Bardock's room and moved to the living room to discuss further what to do. Unbeknownst to them, a mysterious figure, covered in shadows, appeared in the baby's room, standing before Bardock's incubation chamber. A tall womanly figure became visible, her long crimson hair flowed behind her, her glowing purple eyes fixed on the Saiyan baby with a gaze full of love. Her hand touched the glass of the incubation chamber, as she smiled. In her left hand, she clutched a long, elegant staff with a crystal ball with a vertical halo around it. Her presence was otherworldly, as if she didn't belong to this place. "Welcome back, my love," the woman whispered, her voice filled with emotion. Inside the chamber, Bardock's small body stirred slightly, almost as if responding to her voice. For the first time since his birth, his eyes opened, but still blurry. His gaze fell on the glowing purple eyes of the woman. "My love, my dearest husband," the woman's voice trembled, filled with love, affection, and a little sorrow as she pressed her palm against the glass. Tears fell from her eyes, but she still smiled. Soon we'll be together again. Just wait a little longer. Everything will return as it once was, my dear Naruto." She kept looking at the child for a moment longer before her figure began to fade. Without a sound, the woman vanished into the shadows, leaving the room as if she had never been there. Bardock, or perhaps Naruto, closed his eyes, drifting back into the peaceful sleep once more. 2 years later, the morning sun's warm light filled Bardock and Jine's bedroom, bathing the room in warmth. Jine lay in the arms of her brother-in-law, Bardock, sleeping after a night filled with pleasure. As the morning light fell on Jine, she snuggled closer to Bardock. She let out a small yawn. Bardock stirred. Slowly his hand went to Jine's soft melons. His hand squeezed her, pulling her closer, with his morning wood being hot-dogged by Jine's doughy, fat cheeks. Jine woke up and smirked. Good morning," Jine whispered, her voice still groggy from sleep as her huge were fondled by his rough hands. Bardock grinned, fully awake. "Morning, sis," he murmured, his hand went down her back before resting on her round, fat. He gave it a squeeze, making Jine let out a soft moan as she pressed herself against his heart even more, her hips rolling slightly to tease his morning wood. "You're spoiled, you know that," Jine teased, feeling him grow even harder between her cheeks. Bardock chuckled, his hand squeezing her again, this time harder. "It's not my fault you feel so damn good," he growled in her ear. Jine shifted, her tail wrapped around his shaft, stroking his as she whispered, "I bet you're still thinking about fucking my like last night, aren't you?" Bardock groaned. "Last night was amazing," he admitted. With a smirk he smacked her, making her gasp. "Besides, you are the one who made me hard." Jine chuckled softly. "Well, I suppose I can't let you suffer like this." Moments later, Jine was found between his legs giving him a wet, sloppy morning blowjob. Her lips formed a tight O-ring around his shaft, and her head quickly bobbed back and forth as she easily gave her brother-in-law a sloppy blowjob. While he was groaning in pleasure, his hands were not idle. He put his hands on her head. Jine took Bardock's out of her mouth and smiled at him. Her tongue was dangerously close to licking his veiny member. Giving the prick a long lick, she slowly rolled her tongue around the engorged head, lapping at his pre-jizz. She slowly pumped his skillfully with a sultry smile. She took his in her mouth again and gave a long, sloppy, skillfully taking his down her throat while swirling her tongue around she could still taste the flavor of her and his mixed cum on his. Bardock moaned in pleasure, pushing her deeper and making her take his down her throat. She bobbed her head up and down, much to his pleasure. The room became filled with the sound of gines and slurping on his. It wasn't the first time she was doing this with her mate's brother. In Saiyan society, physical intimacy and relationships were vastly different from many other species. Was not just an act of reproduction but a form of bonding, a fun activity filled with pleasure. The Saiyan people held a unique view of morality when it came to relationships. This meant that was open, celebrated, and shared among family members and friends alike. Fathers with daughters, mothers with sons, and siblings having with one another were all considered normal. It wasn't uncommon for Saiyan men and women to swap partners for nights of passion. They loved pleasure just as much as their love for battle. Jine and Bardock's night together was no exception. While their respective mates were away on missions, they found comfort and pleasure in each other's arms. Both knew that Bardock and Selipa were doing the same. They had orgies and parties with each other many times before. It only made them closer to each other. Yet, one rule remained unbroken among all the Saiyans. A female Saiyan could only bear her mate's child, and males were expected to impregnate only their mate. While accidents could happen, they were typically dealt with without much fuss. However, not all Saiyans were too open. Everyone had their own preferences. Some did not like open relationships, some preferred only their mates, some strictly kept it within the family, and some preferred multiple partners and mates. The higher class Saiyans, mainly the royal family, were strictly kept within the family. They were careful to keep their bloodlines pure, keeping away from lower class Saiyan's blood. An hour later, Jine and Bardock finished their carnal activities. After a quickie in the steam-filled shower they exited with a satisfied grin on their faces. Once dressed in their usual attire, Jine couldn't wait to check on her baby boy. "Good morning, Bardock," she said cheerfully, looking into the incubation chamber. She smiled, even though she received no reply from her son, who was still peacefully sleeping inside. Bardock, fully dressed, leaned against the doorframe. "I'll see you later, Jine," he said. "Goodbye, Bardock." Jine planted a quick kiss on her brother-in-law's cheek. "Take care out there." As Bardock left, Jine turned her attention to the kitchen. Today, Bardock and Selipa would return from their mission, and she wanted everything to be perfect. "I need to prepare something special for Bardock," she murmured to herself. "God knows what he's been eating these past few weeks." With a wide smile, she began to gather the necessary ingredients. "He's going to love this," she said, imagining his reaction. Nothing like a home-cooked meal to fill his stomach after a long mission. She giggled, knowing she would be Bardock's next meal after he had his fill with her cooking. Not far from planet Vegeta, a small spaceship was traveling through space, nearly approaching the Saiyan solar system. Inside the ship, the atmosphere was anything but quiet. In the main resting chamber, the crew leader's bed bounced under the weight of two Saiyans. Bardock and his sister-in-law, Selipa, were busy fucking each other's brains out. The air was filled with the scent of as the two lost themselves in pleasure and desire. "Fuck," Selipa screamed in pleasure. "You're so big, Bardock." "Fuck, your cunt feels so tight, Selipa." Jine's mate growled and hammered into her cunt from behind. "Fuck, fuck, fuck." Selipa begged with sweat dripping down her from all over her sexy body. Her fat jiggled with each thrust. Bardock firmly gripped her bountiful hips as he thrust into her fat booty. Underneath, the jiggling of her tits slammed into her own face from the sheer force of her lover's thrusts. Bardock suddenly gripped her tail and squeezed and pulled her towards him harder. The pain from that turned Selipa even more. "Yes, fuck, Harder. Pull my tail again, oh shit. Celipa yelled out in pain and pleasure. The horny Saiyan was now moaning like a whore with the best ahegao smile she could muster. Fuck. Bardock roared. Oh god. Her head flew back, eyes rolling back into her skull, as she was fucked by her lover. Suddenly, she felt him twitch inside her and screamed, "Come in me, Bardock. I can feel it. Fill me up. Dump all that seed inside. Spill your seed inside me. Fuck." The male Saiyan roared as he hit his limits and spewed his load deep into her. Celipa's body shook heavily and screamed in pleasure, as she hit another strong orgasm. Yes. Bodies twitched erotically while Bardock dumped his load inside her. A few moments later, they lay blissfully, wrapped in each other's arms, breathing heavily as sweat dripped from their bodies, making the sheets beneath them wet. The blissful moment was broken by the beeping sound of Bardock's scouter. "Bardock! Bardock!" came the voice of the ship's pilot. Irritated, Bardock groaned, "What is it now? We were having a moment here." Celipa gave a laugh, brushing her hair away from her face. "Yeah, what's so important that you can't let us enjoy our time?" "We're almost back on planet Vegeta," the pilot replied. Bardock glanced over at Celipa, who rolled her eyes in annoyance. "Shut it. We'll be ready in a moment," Bardock said curtly, cutting off the connection. "Damn, I feel like a third wheel here," the pilot muttered to himself, clearly feeling out of place. With a playful shove, Celipa stood up, glancing back at Bardock. "Come on, let's get this over with. We can't keep the pilot waiting forever." Quickly, Bardock and Celipa hopped into the shower. Feels good to be home," the pilot exclaimed as Frieza's massive ship came into view and hundreds of other smaller vessels. "Yeah," Bardock replied, his eyes narrowing at Frieza's main ship. A sense of dread fell over him, his instincts kicking in. "What do you think about all this?" the pilot asked, glancing back to Bardock and Celipa. "Must be important if Frieza called all the Saiyans to assemble." "I don't know," Bardock said, his brow furrowed. "Maybe that short-stack bastard has some big plan," Celipa suggested while mocking the height of the tyrant. "Scouters on. Watch your mouth," Bardock warned him with a serious expression on his face. Celipa quickly turned off her scouter and removed it, a smirk playing on her lips. "Thanks for the reminder, Bardock. I forget how paranoid you can be," she teased, but Bardock's expression remained the same. Bardock's gaze went back to the large ship as they flew past. "Frieza is already here," he noted, his voice dropping. "Something about this is strange. If he wanted to talk to his men, he could have just used the communication devices and sent live messages. If he's got new weapons for us, why call us all back to pick them up together?" Celipa looked at Bardock, confused. "What do you mean? You think something's wrong?" "I have a bad feeling about this," Bardock admitted, his instincts telling him something was off. This entire situation felt off. As their ship finally touched down on the landing pad, Bardock's mind thought of Jin and their son. He was eager to return home, to feel the warmth of his family. As he was about to head off, a fellow Saiyan approached him with a wide grin on his face. Celipa stood nearby filling up a necessary document of their mission. "Yo, Bardock, good to see you back. Didn't think you'd make it alive," the Saiyan joked, giving Bardock a playful punch on the shoulder. Bardock shot him an annoyed look. "Shut up. Any idea why we got called back home so fast?" "Beats me. Maybe they need us to conquer a big fortified planet," the Saiyan shrugged his shoulders. Then he paused, remembering something. "Oh, Bardock, Frieza's people have been asking around about the Super Saiyan." Quote, Bardock's eyes widened. "Super Saiyan? Like the one in the legend?" he asked as realization struck him. "Yeah, not sure why, though," the Saiyan said and went away. "That's it. It all makes sense now, Bardock thought. He recalled some classified information from his mission and whispers from high-ranking members of Frieza's force. At the time, it didn't seem like anything important to him, but now it did. Clicked into place. Every Saiyan called back to their home planet, and Frieza's presence over their planet. Selipa came to him. Listen, Bardock said to his sister-in-law, his voice low. If Frieza is asking about the Super Saiyan, it could mean trouble. We need to be on high alert. The female Saiyan quickly caught up on what he meant. You think he is up to something? Maybe, Bardock replied, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on him. I'm heading home. I need to warn Jine. I'll tell Bardock, Selipa said and quickly took off toward her home. Whatever Frieza was planning, Bardock was going to make sure his family was ready for it. Frieza's ship, Command Bridge. The command bridge of Frieza's flagship was filled with cold air. Frieza in his hover chair, gazed out into space. But his attention was fixed on planet Vegeta. Despite being called the tyrant of the universe, he was quite small, only standing at the height of 5 feet 2 inches. His skin is mostly pink with purple sections on his head. His eyes are narrow and red. He had 2 black horns and a long tail with a purple spike at the end of it. He wore black shorts and a typical armor. Frieza's tail swayed lazily, his crimson eyes narrowing as he watched small ships of the Saiyans entering their home planet. Behind him, his trusted lieutenants, Hikono and Berryblue, stood patiently. Hikono cleared his throat and stepped forward. Lord Frieza, his voice trembled slightly. The majority of the Saiyans have already returned to planet Vegeta as per your orders. And how long until the rest of them arrive? Frieza asked. His voice sounded quite feminine yet held cold and ruthless in her tone. A day or 2 at most, my lord, Hikono answered, tapping at his scouter to confirm the data. Frieza turned his hover chair, his fingers tapping on the armrest. Saiyans. Such a troublesome race. Nothing but wild space monkeys, yet their pride knows no bounds. He smirked. Berryblue stepped forward. Are you concerned about their growing strength, Lord Frieza? Frieza looked at her with amusement. Concerned? He chuckled. No, not at all, Berryblue. But I have heard rumors of a certain legend. The Super Saiyan. There has been no recent info on that matter, my lord, Hikono said. The Super Saiyan is widely considered a myth, an old fairy tale. Nothing to fear, my lord. Frieza glared. Myth, you say? He hovered closer to Hikono, his tail ready to strike. Do you think I'm a fool, Hikono? That I would destroy the entire Saiyan race, because of a mere fairy tale? And no, Lord Frieza, Hikono stuttered, bowing his head. Of course not, but there's no evidence that the Super Saiyan actually exists. Frieza hummed thoughtfully. Perhaps, but myths are born from truth, and I don't like it. He paused for a moment, a warrior of extraordinary power, one that could rival even my own. That is enough for me to destroy them. He only told the half-truth, no need to reveal the real reason why he suddenly wanted to wipe out the Saiyan race. Berryblue spoke up, but the Saiyans, even with their combined strength, are no match for you. Frieza smirked. Indeed, Berryblue. But even the smallest seeds, if left to grow, can become a forest of weeds. He floated back to observe planet Vegeta below. Why allow that to happen? Hikono and Berryblue exchanged a glance and decided not to question their leader further. Keep me informed, Frieza said, breaking the silence. I want to know the moment every last Saiyan is back on that planet. Yes, Lord Frieza, Hikono and Berryblue said in unison, bowing deeply as they stepped back. The Saiyans would all be home soon. And when they do, he would make sure they are all dead. Despite Saiyans being one of the core parts of his army, his decision was made and nothing would change his mind. Besides, they have brought their own destruction on themselves. You shouldn't mess with beings that are out of your puny monkey minds can ever understand. Jine was nearly done cooking in the kitchen, as she hummed softly to herself. She didn't hear Bardock enter the house, moving behind her. With a smirk, he wrapped his arms around her waist, pulling her against him. Jine gasped in surprise, but she relaxed when she smelled the familiar scent of her husband. She looked over her shoulder and smiled when she saw Bardock. "You're back," she said, her voice warm and excited. "Yes," Bardock murmured. He took a long inhale of her scent as he nuzzled closer to her. "We all got called back early. I couldn't wait to see my favorite girl." Jine's smile widened, as she turned herself, and their lips met in a deep kiss. Bardock's hands went down past her hips. Jine moaned into his mouth, feeling her mate groped her cheeks and molding it onto shapes as he pleased. Slowly they pulled away. "Careful," she whispered teasingly, "dinner's almost ready. But if you keep this up, we'll end up burning it." Bardock growled, sending shivers down her spine. "I'm not too worried about the food right now. Besides, I missed you a lot." "Oh, I am sure you did." She gave him a knowing look. "Don't think I can't smell her scent on you, mister." Bardock chuckled along with Jine. "Where's Nardoc? Is he still in the incubation chamber?" Bardock asked, his eyes scanning the room for any sign of his son. "Yes, but it's almost time to let him out," Jine replied excitedly, as she told him to follow her. "You should see him. Come on." She practically sprinted to Nardoc's room. They reached their son's room. He was still sleeping peacefully, floating inside. "Still sleeping, huh?" Bardock said. "Most Saiyan babies break free from their incubation chambers even if they are supposed to stay inside for the first 2 years of their life." But it seemed Nardoc quite liked the comfort of the chamber. "It's almost 2 years now. Maybe he's just a late bloomer," Jine defended her son. "But his growth is perfect. He's coming along well. Tonight, we will bring him out. Wouldn't that be so exciting, Bardock?" Suddenly, Bardock's face turned serious as he kept looking at his son. "Did anything happen while I was gone?" Despite nearly 2 years having passed, they were still being cautious. Any small mistake could cost their son's life. Jine hesitated for a moment. She nodded. "Actually, something did happen," she admitted, surprising Bardock. "About a week ago, Nardoc seemed agitated in his chamber. His power spiked." "What?" Bardock's eyes widened with concern. Jine quickly calmed him. "No one was alerted," she reassured him. "Your brother was here. He made sure it went unnoticed." Bardock sighed in relief, but he sensed there was more, and he pressed. After that, Nardoc's power level doubled. It spiked beyond anything we've ever seen. Bardock stood in shock, looking back and forth between his son and his wife. "Doubled," he whispered. Jine nodded. "But that's not all." Her voice was now filled with relief. "After the spike, his power level dropped rapidly, into normal levels. You can check for yourself." Without hesitation, Bardock pulled out his scouter and measured Nardoc's power. The numbers flashed across the screen. His brows narrowed in confusion. 200, he muttered. That was considered a high power level for a low-class Saiyan child. "See," Jine said excitedly. "It's real, Bardock. His power is dropped down. Maybe his real power became hidden latent power." Bardock stood there, still digesting this recent development. Knowing his son was out of danger should have made him happy, yet he remained concerned. After everything he had learned and with his growing concern about the threat of Frieza hanging over their planet, he couldn't take any risks. "It's good that his power came back down," Jine said. "Now we don't have to send him away. We can raise him here, with us. And when he grows up, I'm sure he'll become even stronger, so strong that not even the king will not be able to pose a threat to him." Bardock narrowed his eyes. "After dark. I'm going to steal a pod for him. Huh. Jine turned to him, her face filled with confusion. Steal a pod? What are you talking about? I don't think we should wait any longer, Bardock said, his voice low and serious. Jine's confusion deepened as she tried to understand what he was saying. What do you mean? She asked in concern. Didn't you hear what I just said? Bardock is safe now. His power level dropped to normal. The king won't have any reason to do anything to him. He's ready to come out of the incubation chamber. And Bardock shook his head, cutting her off. The king isn't our biggest problem anymore, Jine, he said. We have to hurry. Because of Frieza. Frieza, she repeated. Bardock nodded. I think he's afraid of something, of the legendary Super Saiyan. Jine was stunned by his words. Hold on. Super Saiyan. But that's just a myth. A fairy tale, she exclaimed. I know, he said. But Frieza isn't treating it like a myth. He's bothered by it. I got this bad feeling about this. Quote. Jine's eyes went wide, trying to process what he was saying. Tell me you're joking, Bardock, she whispered, her voice trembling. Bardock's face remained serious, on the mission. I overheard things. Frieza's men have been asking questions, digging into legends and rumors about our kind. And then, out of nowhere, he orders every Saiyan back to planet Vegeta. Doesn't that strike you as odd? Why assemble us all at once unless he has something planned? Jine stepped back, her hand covering her mouth in disbelief. But that doesn't mean he's planning to wipe us out, does he? Frieza relies on us. We conquer planets for him. Exactly, Bardock said sharply. He relies on us, but he's also afraid of us. The moment he thinks we're a threat to his rule, he'll destroy us all without a second thought. Jine shook her head. No, that can't be true. It is, Jine, Bardock said. I don't have solid proof, but my instincts are screaming at me. I can't ignore them. That's why we can't wait. I need to get Bardock off this planet, away from here before it's too late. Jine looked between Bardock and their son, who was still resting in the incubation chamber. She felt devastated, but she knew Bardock was right. After a long moment of silence, she agreed. Okay, she said. After dark, we'll do it. Bardock pulled her into a tight hug, trying to calm her broken heart. Night had fallen as Bardock and Jine reached the far side of the planet. Bardock carried the space pod on his right shoulder, inside of which was their son, Naruto. He was wearing the typical Saiyan armor, his tiny fists pounding against the glass, and his muffled cries filled the quiet night. The sounds of his cries were painful, tearing at Jine's heart. Every cry from their son felt like a knife twisting deeper into her chest. She wiped away her own tears, but it was no use. She couldn't hold them back. As there are really no other way? Jine asked while sobbing. There must be another option. She gazed at the pod, her son's tiny fists still hammering against the glass. Bardock's face was hard, but many emotions stormed underneath that hardened look of his, but he had to stay strong. This is the only choice, Jine. Then why don't we all just leave? The three of us, we could go together. She held Bardock, hoping that he would agree. We can't, Bardock said with a heavy voice. They're watching. Frieza's scouters. They'll track us in no time. Bardock's power level is low now. Bardock sighed, placing the pod on the ground. His power can't be picked up from far away right now. Bardock looked at their son. They'd need to be close to detect him. That's why this is the best shot we have. Naruto's tiny face pressed against the window of the pod, his tear-filled eyes locking onto his parents. Jine knelt beside the pod, placing her hand on the glass, her hand trembling. Bardock did the same with his larger hand joining her. I've programmed the pod to head to a planet called Earth, Bardock said. It's in another galaxy, far away. The people there, they're weak. Their power levels are low. He'll be safe there, at least for a while. It's far off Frieza's radar. Jine nodded, though her tears continued to fall. Earth, it's so far. Will he be okay? Will he remember us? Knowing this might be the last time he will ever see them. Bardock's jaw clenched. He couldn't lie to her. I don't know, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. But we have to believe he will be all right. It's the only chance we've got. Bardock, still crying, pressed his hands harder against the glass, as if trying to reach them, trying to break free. Jine's heart shattered at the sight. She leaned her forehead against the glass, closing her tears. Bardock, my son, she whispered, if your father is wrong about this, if we're wrong, we will come for you. I swear it. Her voice broke, and she cried openly. Bardock, fighting to keep his emotions in check. Listen, Bardock, you do whatever it takes to survive. Whatever it takes. You hear me? He looked into the pod, into his son's wide, tear-filled eyes. Be strong, like a Saiyan. His voice catching in his throat, with Jine by his side they said, goodbye, son. The pod began to hum as it slowly lifted off the ground. Jine's eyes widened with panic. Don't forget us, Bardock. She screamed, hoping, praying, please, don't forget us. The energy gathered around the pod as it launched towards the sky, its speed increasing as it left the planet's atmosphere and traveled into space. Jine hugged Bardock, crying into his chest, her body losing power in grief. Bardock held her close, his own heart breaking as he watched the pod disappear into the sky, taking their son far, far away. He tried to remain strong for Jine. But inside, he was just as broken. We'll see him again, Bardock whispered, we'll see him again, somehow. But deep down, both of them knew, nothing would ever be the same. The following day, everything changed. Bardock had been right all along. He, along with his family, had tried to warn their fellow Saiyans. He had stormed into the royal castle, demanding an audience with King Vegeta, but he was denied. Unbeknownst to Bardock and his people, King Vegeta and his elite warriors had already fallen and been slaughtered in cold blood by Frieza's father during a mission. The royal line had been wiped out just like that. Bardock, his brother Bardock, Jine, Selipa, and a handful of Saiyans had fought to warn everyone. Frieza is going to destroy us all. Bardock shouted in the streets. But they called him mad, and delusional, and others just ignored him. Frieza's army covered the planet, preventing any exit. They alone stood before them. His fellow Saiyans fell one by one. Selipa died fighting beside him, her body broken and floating in space. His brother was the next to fall. Frieza's forces tore him apart. Bardock fought until he was barely standing, bloody wounds covering every inch of his body. His armor was torn apart, leaving him defenseless. Still, somehow, he survived. Perhaps it was sheer will. Perhaps it was Jine's prayers and love that kept him alive. But now, Bardock stood alone. Just above the planet's atmosphere, Frieza's ship hovered like a predator. Bardock's instinct screamed. His fists clenched tightly. This would be his last stand. Frieza floated out of his ship in his hover chair, his icy gaze lazily scanning the planet beneath him. Saiyans. Frieza muttered with a cruel smirk on his lips, time to die monkeys. Bardock knew he had no chance, but his Saiyan pride wouldn't let him accept his own death that easily. If he was going to die, he would go down fighting until his last breath, dying like a true Saiyan warrior. His aura flared. He surrounded him as he charged toward Frieza, every ounce of his remaining strength poured into this final attack. I won't let you do this. Bardock roared. Frieza. Frieza watched Bardock. Oh, How amusing, he chuckled. The last, desperate act from a Saiyan, how amusing indeed. Raising one finger, Frieza began to gather ki, forming a glowing small sphere. Time to end this little game, Frieza said with a smirk. The small ki blast shot from his fingertip toward the planet below, toward Bardock. The small falling sphere suddenly grew larger and larger into a large death ball. Bardock roared as he fired a powerful ki blast directly at Frieza's death ball. Arrrrrrrgh, the beam collided with the death ball, trying to push it back. Bardock gritted his teeth, pouring everything into the blast. I won't let you destroy us, he screamed and pushed back. But it wasn't enough. Frieza's death ball pushed forward, and overpowered Bardock's ki blast without any effort. Bardock roared, trying his best to push back till the death ball swallowed his blast, along with him. Live, Nardoc, he screamed as the death ball swallowed him. Live, my son, survive, for all of us. His scream echoed one last time before his figure disappeared, disintegrating completely. The lone Saiyan warrior wasn't alone. Countless Frieza Force men also got caught by the giant death ball, all because the tyrant wanted no witnesses alive to tell the tale. Down below, all the unaware Saiyans looked up at the sky, terrified as the death ball continued its slow descent. Jine prayed one last time, holding a picture of her happy family. Her prayer was not for herself, not for Bardock, but for her son. Live free, my baby. Live for us, Nardoc, she whispered, as tears flowed freely from her eyes while she looked at the picture of herself, Bardock, and baby Nardoc still in his incubation chamber. The death ball finally made contact with planet Vegeta. The impact sent shockwaves across the planet, and in an instant, everything was consumed by the blinding light of destruction. The planet cracked, the ground split apart, and moments later planet Vegeta was no more. Frieza watched as the red planet was vaporized into nothingness. Goodbye, Saiyans, he said, you will not be missed. And with that, the mighty Saiyan race was reduced to ashes. Only a handful remained scattered across the stars, unaware of their planet's fate, unaware that their people had been wiped from existence. Far off in the vastness of space, far away from the destroyed planet Vegeta, a space pod was traveling through space, glowing with an energy field. The pod's design was purely for transportation, equipped with advanced life support systems to ensure the survival of its precious passengers. Inside the space pod, the ship's onboard AI came to life. A robotic voice echoed in the silent pod, identifying passenger, please stand by. A small mechanical arm extended from the wall, approaching the pod's passenger, a 2-year-old Saiyan child. The baby blinked groggily, his tail twitching slightly as he shifted in his sleep. Without warning, the mechanical arm punctured the child's arm with a needle, extracting a small blood sample. The child, Bardock or perhaps Naruto, flinched and began to whimper, but the AI continued its task without care. Analyzing sample, the scanner lit up. A moment later, the AI voice spoke again. Passenger, Bardock, son of Bardock and Jine. Status: low-class Saiyan. Destination: Earth. Estimated time of arrival: 2 months. Bardock's cry of pain filled the pod, but it quickly faded as the AI activated the hibernation mode. Slowly the child fell into deep sleep for the long journey. The pod, now silent once more, continued its journey toward its distance. 2 months later, the pod approached Earth, its metallic body beginning to heat up as it entered the planet's atmosphere. Inside, Bardock was still asleep, unaware of the world he was about to crash into. Suddenly, the AI voice once again came to life. Wake up, Bardock. Destination reached. Landing procedures initiated. Bardock's eyes slowly opened, his vision was blurry and confused. He yawned, rubbing at his eyes with a tiny fist as he glanced out the window. The view outside caught his attention, a beautiful planet that glowed with shades of green, blue, and white. His young mind was amazed at the beauty of the world below. His lips curled into a small smile, a sense of familiarity washing over him as if he was finally home. But the peace was short-lived. The pod began to violently shake, scaring the child, and Bardock let out a loud cry. His cries filled the pod as it descended. Outside, the pod fell through the sky like a shooting star. The turbulence grew worse, and the Saiyan child's cries grew louder. The pod's automated systems slowly stabilized the descent, and crashed into the earth, sending a shockwave through the surrounding area. A crater formed around it. Bardock was protected by the pod's protective systems. Far from the crash site, at the foot of a dense forest, a small hut was seen. Beside the old hut, a bald old man about 5 feet 5 inches sat by a campfire. His Fu Manchu mustache and beach outfit made the man look like a retired man. He heard an explosion that shook the mountains and the forest, shaking the ground beneath him. Startled, he looked at the distance. Smoke and dust rose in the distance. Well, now, what could that have been? A meteor, maybe. He rubbed his chin thoughtfully. It's far from here, though. It'll take me 2 days to get there on foot. No need to rush. He began to pack a few supplies and a wooden staff. Looks like you were right as always, Yaga, he muttered to himself. Something interesting did happen after all. Coming here wasn't a waste. With a final sigh, he began his slow walk toward the crash site. Back at the crater, Naruto stirred, his cries fading as he slowly calmed down. His tail flicked around behind him as he looked out of the pod's window. The AI voice chimed in one last time. Welcome to Earth, Bardock. This will be your new home. The AI's systems, having detected the dark surroundings, decided not to open the pod's door until daylight. The Saiyan child blinked, unable to understand those words. All he knew was that he was alone. His eyes grew heavy once more as exhaustion took over him again and he fell asleep once again. The morning came, the sun's warm rays fell, and the entire forest began to awake. Birds chirped softly in the trees, and small animals began to roam around. The pod's AI is softly powered up. The soft glow of the sun entered through the pod's window, warming Naruto's small form. Slowly, his eyes slowly opened. He rubbed his eyes with his tiny hands and stretched his arms. He turned his head, catching sight of the outside. With a hiss, the pod's door opened. Pod opening. Welcome to Earth, Bardock. The Saiyan child, still a bit groggy, blinked and stared at the open door for a moment. Slowly, curiosity got the better of him, and he began to crawl outside. He hesitated for a moment, unsure of what to do. Then Bardock tried to stand up. His legs shook and he fell back onto his butt. But the little Saiyan didn't give up. He grunted again, getting back to his feet. This time he stood tall as a 2-year-old could. Naruto took a shaky step forward, then another. His movements were clumsy, but with each step, his confidence grew. Soon, he was walking into the surrounding forest. Saiyan's large, curious eyes scanned his surroundings. He looked at the towering trees and heard sounds of birds singing, and many small animals here and there. He was cautious, but his curiosity was greater. A few deer appeared as they noticed the small child. Birds flew closer as they sang their morning songs. Bardock stood there for a while, wanting to explore more. But despite his curiosity, something held him back from going too far from his pod. After a while, he felt hungry and Bardock decided to head back to the pod. Inside, he found processed food that had been packed for him. His stomach growled as he began to eat, including the packages, not knowing they were not meant to eat. As he ate, a sound caught his attention. Naruto looked up and saw a bird standing just outside the pod. The bird watched him with curiosity. The Saiyan child smiled brightly at the bird and offered some food. The bird flew closer and took the offered food. Bardock giggled happily and gently petted the bird, who did not feel scared by the child's touch. Soon, other animals began to gather around the pod. A deer cautiously approached, squirrels and rabbits too. But as the day went on, the sun began to set. The animals began to return to their home. One by one, they disappeared into the forest, leaving Bardock alone. Only the bird remained, making the pod its shelter for the night. Bardock didn't mind. He went inside the pod as night fell, and the forest was soon covered in darkness. The next morning, the sun rose once again. Bardock awoke to the soft chirping of birds inside his pod. Today, Bardock felt more adventurous. He decided to explore further. Stepping out of the pod, he went deeper into the woods, wandering around and exploring to his heart's content. However, he never strayed too far from the pod. After a short while, the Saiyan boy returned to his pod once more, feeling satisfied with his exploration. The old man walked through the thick forest, his bald head shining under the sun. His thick white Fu Manchu mustache flowed gently in the breeze, as did his matching beard. On his back was a large turtle shell. His sunglasses reflected the sun's light. It took less time than I thought, he muttered to himself as he neared the massive crater. He pushed through a few bushes, expecting to see the remnant of a meteor, but what he saw left him speechless. Right near the crater was a small boy, no older than 2. The kid had spiky reddish-black hair and was clad in what appeared to be armor. However, there is one thing that caught his eye: was the long, furry tail behind the boy. The boy, Bardock, looked around cautiously, waiting for something. He tensed when he heard the sounds from the bushes nearby. An old man stepped into his sight. His body was unknowingly prepared to fight, yet his mind told him to run. "Well, little guy," the old man said with a warm smile, "are you the one who caused that huge explosion yesterday?" His voice was raspy, but filled with kindness. Bardock stared at the old man in confusion. His instincts made him wary. Still, he didn't respond, only blinking at the man with wide, curious eyes. "Why are you all alone here? Where's your father, your mother?" the old man asked, crouching down to meet the boy's eye level. The boy, however, only stared back silently. The old man scratched his beard, glancing at the crater, and saw a pod in the middle of it. He stood up and moved closer to Bardock. "Come on, little guy. I'll take care of you," the old man said, picking up the young Saiyan. The boy's fist shot out with lightning speed, landing a solid punch on the old man's chin. "Oof." The man was taken aback. "Kid, that really hurt," he chuckled. "You're quite the fighter, aren't you? Maybe I should train you a bit. With that attitude, you might become a great martial artist someday," he said as he rubbed his chin. Despite being cautious, Bardock found himself curious about the strange old man. He didn't put up any more fight when the old man carried him to his pod. After a short walk, they arrived in the middle of the crater where the pod was. The old man's jaw dropped as he took in the sight of the space pod nestled in the dirt. "A pod," he murmured to himself. "No, it couldn't be. Probably some kind of satellite or weather station. But this is something else." Bardock, who had spent months in that pod, showed no signs of fear or surprise. The old man scratched his bald head, still processing. He turned his back on the pod and looked at the boy. "So, what should I do with you, kid?" he mused aloud. "I can't leave you here. Guess I'll have to take care of you until I can find your parents. Even if that means traveling through space." "Ha ha," he laughed, though there was a hint of nervousness in his voice. Taking care of children wasn't exactly his expertise. "Now then, what should I call you? Do you have a name, kid." Just then, a soft, gentle voice of a woman whispered through the air, "Naruto." "His name is Naruto." The old man froze, his eyes wide behind his sunglasses. He glanced around, trying to sense and locate the source of the mysterious voice. But all he could see were the trees and hear the chirping of birds. He shivered, unsure of whether he had imagined it. "Naruto," he muttered under his breath, testing the name. The moment the word left his lips, the boy in his arms giggled and clapped, his face lighting up with joy. The old man blinked in surprise. "Well, would you look at that? Seems like you like that name, huh? Naruto, huh?" He glanced around the forest again, still searching for where that voice came from. "I don't know where that name came from, but you seem to be familiar with it." The boy giggled again. "Well, Naruto it is." He smiled, his previous wariness slowly fading away, dismissing the voice as his imagination. "Now, where are my manners? I haven't introduced myself yet." He puffed out his chest, a comical grin spreading across his face. He put Naruto on his feet. Suddenly, he struck a weird pose. "I am the turtle hermit. The sage. The master of the turtle school. The strongest man in the world." He raised a finger dramatically into the air, and most of all, the legendary super pervert, Master Roshi. Naruto burst into giggles, clapping his hands in excitement at the old man's comedic display. "You like that, huh?" Roshi said, grinning. "Well, it's good to see you have good taste, kid." Roshi chuckled to himself. A few weeks ago, he would have laughed if anyone told him he'd end up finding a strange child in a forest. But here he was. His sister, Yaga, had visited him just a few weeks ago, as she did every year. One thing led to another, and before he knew it, she was reading his fortune with her magical powers. "You'll find great fortune in the forest," she had told him. Roshi had brushed it off, reluctant to leave his house. He'd rather watch bimbos with huge racks and fat in skimpy outfits doing erotic yoga on TV than go into the mountains and forest. But, as always, he couldn't say no to his sister. Now, looking down at the little boy, Naruto in his arms, Roshi realized Yaga might have been right after all. Fortune had certainly come in an unexpected form. "Well, kid," Roshi sighed, "looks like we're in this together now. Let's see what kind of trouble we can get into." Not so far from them, a tall womanly figure watched the old man and the child leave. Her long crimson hair flowed gently. Her bright purple eyes glowed softly with a mixture of happiness and sorrow. She stood silently, her gaze fixed on the boy in Master Roshi's arms. It was the same woman who had visited Naruto during his time in the incubation chamber, claiming him to be her husband. She felt relieved, knowing that Naruto was in good hands now. She had longed to hold him, to protect him herself, but she knew it was not her time to interfere directly. As Roshi and Naruto moved further away, she whispered into the wind, "Good luck, my love. I'll always be watching over you." Her voice was filled with love and desire. She looked at Naruto one last time before she faded back into nothingness. A few months later, the next few months were challenging for Master Roshi. Living in the small hut with a child, still waiting for the little one's parents to come, was something he was not prepared for. On top of that, Naruto, energetic and incredibly strong for a child his age, was unlike any child Roshi had ever seen. Every day was a new surprise and a new mess to clean up. When Roshi bathed Naruto, the boy would sometimes kick so hard that the custom-made tub would shatter, leaving the old master to repair it again and again. Roshi tried to keep Naruto entertained with toys, wooden blocks, a rocking horse, a doll, and even a small wooden bike. But no matter what he made or bought, Naruto would break them, often unintentionally, with his immense strength. The only thing that truly captured the boy's attention was hunting. Naruto loved going out into the forest with Roshi to track wild animals for their daily meals. He especially loved the thrill of catching his own food, always eager to eat so much that he devoured more than the amount of food for 2 or 3 men. One day, while hunting, Naruto encountered a saber-toothed tiger. Without hesitation, he punched the beast, and with one hit, it lay dead at his feet. Roshi stood in shock, his mouth agape. The punch didn't even seem that hard, and yet the tiger was no more. And just the other day, the boy had shattered a boulder with a casual punch. No ordinary child could do such things. Master Roshi began to observe Naruto more carefully. He noticed several unusual traits. Naruto's spiky, reddish-black hair and his strange tail. No human child had a tail like that. The tail, he discovered, was incredibly sensitive, causing the boy to cry out whenever it was pulled or touched. He used his key sensing abilities to check the boy's power level, and it confirmed that he had suspected Naruto's energy was far higher than any normal human, especially for a child. Questions flooded Roshi's mind. Space pod, he thought, armored kid, explosion, crater, it all started to make sense. Naruto wasn't human. He was an alien. That night Naruto had fallen asleep, but Roshi couldn't. They were still staying in a hut at the foot of the forest near Mount Paozu, a place that had once belonged to one of his students, who had passed away. Roshi's mind raced. He decided to take a closer look at the space pod Naruto had arrived in. He stepped inside the pod. As he did, several screens lit up, filled with strange symbols and unreadable text. He had lived for over 300 years and had learned many languages, but none of these symbols made sense to him. It confirmed his suspicion that Naruto was not of this world. Roshi was deep in thought. What should he do now? If anyone found out that Naruto was an alien, greedy humans would surely try to capture and experiment on the boy. They'd harm him, and Roshi couldn't allow that. Roshi made up his mind that he would protect Naruto, raise him, and train him to become so powerful that no one could ever harm him. The next morning Naruto woke up early, as he always did, filled with energy. He got out of bed and stepped outside the small hut. The first thing he saw was Master Roshi, moving around, jumping, punching, and kicking the air. Naruto's eyes widened in curiosity. The old man looked like he was having fun, so Naruto tried to mimic his movements from a distance, copying the punches and kicks. Roshi sensed Naruto's presence and looked over. "Hey there, kid," he called, waving. "Awake already, huh?" he chuckled, watching as Naruto eagerly waved back, his face lighting up with happiness. The Saiyan boy ran over to him. Roshi knelt to his level. "Naruto," he began, his voice soft but firm, "I've decided to adopt you." Of course, Naruto couldn't understand the words yet. Roshi lifted Naruto onto his shoulders. The child giggled and enjoyed the ride. Roshi smiled. "Come on, Naruto," he said, "we're going to the city today." As soon as Roshi took off into the air, flying toward the nearest city, Naruto's eyes widened in surprise. He held Roshi's shirt tightly. The little boy didn't cry or show fear, instead, he only showed excitement. Roshi smiled to himself as he flew. Somehow, the decision to adopt Naruto felt right. It was as if he had found something that had been missing his whole life, a son. Under Roshi's guidance, Naruto would grow into something truly incredible. Time skip. It had been 11 years since Master Roshi had taken Naruto as his adopted son, and those years had been nothing short of eventful. Raising a child as powerful and energetic as Naruto had its ups and downs, but the old master had come to love the role of fatherhood. Though it was challenging, Roshi had learned how to handle Naruto's immense strength and boundless energy. Now, he couldn't imagine life without him. On this peaceful morning, Master Roshi sat inside his lovely, calm house, a small pink house with a red roof that stood on a tiny island far out in the ocean. Despite its remote location, the house had everything a modern house needed, with the TV and phones working just fine. The small house was almost indestructible. It had survived countless incidents, including the time Naruto, while training his Kamehameha technique, accidentally created a tsunami that engulfed the house. Yet, the house remained unscathed. The house could even be stored inside a capsule. Roshi stood up from his bed and stretched, taking a moment to bathe in the morning sun before stepping outside. His gaze fell on Naruto, who was training on the beach. The 13-year-old was already a sight to behold, standing at 5 feet 6 inches, with a muscular build. He appeared significantly older than he actually was. He was wearing a sleek kung fu outfit and his spiky dark reddish-brown hair looked as wild as ever. Roshi smiled, feeling proud of his adopted son. Think of teen Vegito with a body like preteen Gohan SSJ2-like body wearing Bruce Lee's iconic uniform. Naruto noticed his dad and stopped his training. "Hey, Dad, what's up?" he called out, wiping the sweat from his face. "Good morning, son. Up and training already?" Master Roshi asked, stepping forward with a chuckle. "Yeah," Naruto replied, shrugging. "I have to train every day if I want to get stronger," he said with determination, but his stomach let out a loud growl. Naruto rubbed the back of his neck sheepishly, flashing his father an embarrassed grin. "Hey, guess I'm hungry." Roshi laughed at Naruto's antics, always amused by how his appetite seemed to grow with his strength. "Well, come inside, Naruto. Let's have some breakfast before you tear down the house with that stomach of yours." The two made their way back into the house and started eating what the old man had already cooked: rice, eggs, and some leftovers from last night. As they ate, Roshi couldn't help but marvel at how much Naruto had grown, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally as well. Flashback. After officially adopting Naruto, Master Roshi took him to a local store, where he bought him clothes and other necessities. The two of them returned to Mount Paozu to retrieve the space pod, and then Roshi brought Naruto to his home. It was there that he began to raise the alien boy. At the age of 4, Roshi decided it was time to fully introduce Naruto to martial arts. He took him to a larger island, where he began teaching him turtle-style martial arts and how to harness and control his ki. Naruto proved to be a prodigy with how fast he was progressing. However, there was one weakness found when he first started training: his tail. When it was squeezed, it caused Naruto extreme pain. So Roshi made sure Naruto trained with his tail as well to build pain tolerance and eliminate that obvious weakness. When Naruto turned 5, something shocking happened. One night, while they were having a barbecue under a full moon. When the young Saiyan's gaze fell on the moon, Naruto suddenly froze. "Dad, I don't feel so good." His breathing quickened, making Roshi worried. "Are you all right, Naruto?" he asked in concern. Naruto's gaze remained locked on the moon as his tail began to twitch. A spark ignited in his eyes, now flashing crimson, and his heartbeat quickened. Suddenly, he blacked out. To anyone watching, it would appear as if he was transforming before their eyes, his teeth sharpening into fangs, his nails turning into claws, and his body getting bigger and bigger, tearing out of his clothes. Reddish-brown fur grew all over his body, his face turned into a muzzle, and his whole eyes became blood red. G G G G G G R R R R R R R R R R R O O O O O O O A A A A A A A A R R R R R R R R R R. The newly transformed Naruto roared, shaking the very ground beneath them and sending all nearby wildlife fleeing. Roshi stood frozen in shock. What on earth? How? He struggled to find the words. Before him loomed a giant, 30-foot-tall ape. R R R R R R R R R R R R R R R R R R R R R R. Another earth-shattering roar erupted from Naruto. No! Roshi gasped, gazing up at the beast. Naruto! He whispered, panic rising in his chest. Naruto! Please! Say something! As if he'd heard Roshi's plea, the beast paused. Naruto clutched his head, shaking it violently, then gave another roar, but this time it was in pain. I think I'm getting through to him, Roshi said, cupping his hands around his mouth. Naruto, please listen. It's me, Roshi, your dad. You remember me, don't you? Please, say something. Dad. Naruto's deepened voice echoed, yet it was still a childlike tone. Relief washed over Roshi. Thank goodness you still remember me. You really scared me there, Roshi said with a smile. Naruto didn't grasp why he wouldn't remember his own dad. But an important question came to his mind. Dad, how come you're so small? He looked around in surprise. Dad, everything is so small. What happened? Naruto, you need to know, I didn't shrink. Everything is still the same size. You just got bigger. I did. Naruto tilted his head in confusion, looking adorably naive despite his monstrous appearance. Roshi nodded. Yes, and it seems you transformed into a giant ape somehow. I'm still trying to wrap my head around this. Ape. Naruto raised a massive, furry arm to his face. His eyes widened as he examined his feet, and his giant furry body. Panic surged within him. He plopped down onto his butt. Tears filled his eyes, which Roshi couldn't miss. Sniff, but I don't want to be a giant monster ape thing. I wanna be me again, Dad. I can't go into our house because I'm too big, or sleep in my bed or anything. I wanna change back now. Help me, Dad. Naruto's cries filled the night, echoing through the island. Roshi wanted to comfort him, to help him, but he was just as lost. One moment, Naruto was a boy, the next, he was a beast. He didn't know what to do. Maybe if he could get Naruto to recount what happened, it would provide a clue. But suddenly something caught his senses. Wait, Naruto, noticing a bright red light gathering in the back of his son's throat, but it seemed Naruto was unaware. Naruto, stop, before you. Too late. Naruto unleashed a massive red ki blast, propelling himself backward as he caught himself with his giant arms. The ki blast soared above the sea until it hit an island far away, destroying it in a large explosion. Blinding light covered the whole night sky. They both stared in awe but for different reasons. What power! This boy, no older than 5, has so much ki. And it just came from his mouth. Plus, there's so much power behind it. Is it because of this form? Roshi thought in surprise and amazement. Wow! Did I just do that? Awesome! Naruto grinned like a child. Roshi slowly turned to gaze up at Naruto. How did you do that? I don't know, Dad, I just did it. Roshi didn't exactly expect any answer, given that he hadn't taught Naruto any ki techniques yet. Naruto, do you know how you got like this? What were you doing before you transformed? Well, I remember looking at the moon, Naruto replied. The moon? Roshi raised an eyebrow, surprised. But you've seen the moon plenty of times. Naruto nodded. But this is the first time I saw a full moon. Now, Roshi's eyes widened with understanding. I think I get it now, my boy. That's why this happened to you. It's the full moon. He glanced back at the moon. I guess when it goes away, you'll turn back to your normal self. Naruto's eyes sparkled with hope. Really? Well, it's a guess. But if I'm right, then yes. So since you'll probably change back when daylight comes, what do you think of your ape form now? Naruto beamed, showing off his sharp teeth. It's awesome. That thing I did that blew up was so cool. And I'm taller than you, Dad, and everything. Roshi chuckled at the boy's excitement. Just moments ago, Naruto had been terrified, but learning he would return to normal with the dawn had completely shifted his mood. "Well, Naruto, it seems you'll need to sleep outside tonight. But I'll stay with you if you'd like, all right?" Naruto nodded eagerly. "Thanks, Dad." Roshi went inside his tent to grab a blanket, returning to find Naruto lying on his back with his eyes closed, a smile still lingering on his face. He nestled against Naruto's giant furry arm, using it as a pillow. "What should I call this form, Dad?" Naruto asked, his voice sleepy. Roshi pondered. "I'm not sure. What do you think?" How about Uzaru?" "Uzaru? Where did that come from?" Roshi inquired. "I don't know. It just came to my mind." Roshi decided not to question it further. "Well, then, now sleep, you need your rest." With a loud yawn, Naruto closed his eyes, relaxing. "Good night, Dad." "Good night, Naruto." As both drifted off to sleep, each pondered how the future would turn out after such a phenomenon. One thing was certain, it would be interesting. As the years passed, Master Roshi trained Naruto extensively, watching with pride as the boy progressed. Naruto's body adapted quickly to every challenge, and even his once vulnerable tail, his greatest weakness, became a source of strength. Roshi had worked hard with Naruto on this, constantly aiming at the tail during sparring sessions until Naruto could withstand the pain. Over time, he no longer felt pain when it was grabbed. Academically, Naruto was not a prodigy nor was he below average, but Roshi never saw it as a problem. The boy was more interested in martial arts than books, and that was okay. He wasn't meant to be a scholar. What Naruto lacked in academics, he more than made up for with his unbreakable will and passion for fighting. Roshi taught him about the world, societies, civilization, and its histories. Took him to cities. There was everything, from buildings to vehicles, and even every modern technology. He taught everything to Naruto. Although these things were foreign to Naruto, who lived his early childhood on islands, Roshi made sure the boy understood everything. One thing was for sure: Naruto learned by doing things, seeing things, but not by reading books. Naruto might not have seen much of the world yet, but his mind was quick, and he absorbed what he could. By the time Naruto was 10, Roshi decided it was time to tell him the truth about his origins, or at least, what little Roshi knew. One evening, as the sun was setting, Roshi brought up the subject. "Naruto, there's something I've been meaning to show you. It's about where you came from," Roshi said, his tone more serious than usual. Naruto's eyebrows furrowed in confusion. "What do you mean, Dad?" Roshi led him to the old space pod and got straight to the point. "This pod, you arrived in it. It's where your journey started, son. You might not be from this planet." Naruto's eyes widened as he processed the revelation. "Wait, you're saying, I'm an alien?" "I believe so," Roshi nodded. "There might be more answers in that pod, something that can tell you where you truly came from." With a deep breath, Naruto approached the pod. The inside was compact and worn from years of disuse. He sat on the seat inside, his heart pounding in his chest. Suddenly, a mechanical voice of the pod AI came to life, identifying, "Please stand by." The pod scanned Naruto from head to toe before speaking again. "Passenger, Bardock." "Bardock," Naruto repeated aloud, feeling odd familiarity with the word. "Is that my real name?" Roshi remained silent, watching with curiosity as Naruto tried to piece together this new information. An unknown fear gripped his heart that he could not explain. Playing the last recording, Naruto's heart raced as a screen flickered to life. On it appeared two people, a man and a woman. They both resembled Naruto in some ways, but their faces were different and unfamiliar. The woman spoke first, her voice trembling. "Bardock, my son," she began, her words filled with emotion. "If your father is wrong about this, if we're wrong, we will come for you." I swear it. The sight of the woman who just claimed Naruto as her son, openly crying, tugged at Naruto's heart. The sound of her sobs was heart-wrenching. The man, who Naruto assumed was his father, stepped forward. His voice was firm but full of emotion. Listen, Bardock, you do whatever it takes to survive. Whatever it takes. You hear me? He looked as if he was looking straight into Naruto's eyes. Be strong, like a Saiyan. Saiyan, Naruto whispered. The word echoed in his mind. Is that what I am? Goodbye, son, they both said in unison, the screen fading to black. Naruto unintentionally reached for them. He felt sad, happy, confused and full of unknown emotions. He sat there, stunned. His mind buzzed with 1,000 questions, but before he could dwell on them, 3 slender cables extended from the pod and gently attached themselves to his forehead. A flood of information began flowing into his mind, basic knowledge about what it meant to be a Saiyan, their natural abilities, and basic fighting techniques. The process was overwhelming, and when it was over, Naruto was left gasping for air. He exited the pod slowly, his face a mix of wonder and confusion. Dad, Naruto started, his voice shaky. I think I saw my real parents. Roshi's heart tightened at Naruto's words, but before he could respond, Naruto rushed forward and embraced him tightly. But you're still my dad. You're the one who raised me. He cried on his dad's shoulder, not daring to let go. Roshi felt a lump in his throat. Naruto, he trailed off, hugging the boy back, feeling somewhat relieved. And you will always be my son, never doubt that. Calming down Naruto, he continued, so, what did you learn? After a moment, Naruto pulled back, his eyes wide with curiosity. Dad, there's so much I need to figure out. Why did they send me here? Roshi nodded, his expression softening. You're right, son. We should talk about everything you learned. But first, let's go inside. We sit down and just talk it out. Naruto agreed, his head still swimming with new knowledge and revelations, but he knew one thing for sure. No matter what his origins were, this was his family, and nothing could change that. The morning was as usual on Roshi's island. The sun had risen high, as the morning slowly passed. Naruto, after his morning training, decided to do some household chores. If he didn't clean up, who knew what kind of mess Roshi would end up in? The old man was practically hopeless when it came to keeping the house in order. As Naruto swept and tidied up, he chuckled at the thought of his father without him, probably buried under piles of porn magazines and dirty ramen bowls. Meanwhile, Master Roshi settled into his favorite spot on the couch, remote in hand, turning on the TV. With a perverted grin, he flipped to his favorite program, hot women doing aerobics in skimpy, barely legal gym outfits. His eyes widened, and a trickle of blood slowly ran down his nose as he watched their bouncy melons and jiggling fat. Ah, now that's how you start a day, Roshi muttered, chuckling to himself. Roshi was a known super pervert, and despite his old age, his appetite for women hadn't diminished in the slightest. He would be damned if he didn't pass on some of that lustful wisdom to Naruto. Fortunately for him, Naruto turned out just the same. The boy had an eye for beautiful women. In fact, Naruto's first kiss, and much to Roshi's pride, a blowjob had come from a sexy mermaid during one of their island adventures. Roshi had never been prouder. A sloppy blowjob from a mermaid was something to die for. As Naruto worked his way through cleaning the basement, he noticed something odd tucked away in a dusty corner. A strange orange ball with 3 red stars inside it. Curious, Naruto picked it up. It glowed dimly for a moment before it faded back to normal. What is this thing? He wondered aloud. Naruto ran up the stairs and found Roshi, who was still glued to the television, grinning ear to ear as the women on the screen twerked their fat asses in their non-existent tight booty shorts. Dad, look what I found, Naruto called out, holding up the strange orb. Roshi tore his eyes away from the screen, slightly annoyed at being interrupted, but when he saw the ball in Naruto's hand, his face lit up with recognition. "Well, that's a Dragon Ball," Roshi exclaimed, sitting up straight. "A Dragon Ball," Naruto repeated, tilting his head. "What's that?" Roshi turned off the TV. "Dragon Balls are magical orbs. If you collect all 7 of them, you can summon a dragon named Shenron, and he'll grant you any 2 wishes." Naruto's eyes widened with excitement. "Wait, any wish? That's incredible. Maybe I can collect all 7 Dragon Balls and make my wish. But where can I find the others?" Roshi scratched his chin. "Well, the Dragon Balls are scattered all over the world, and they can be in just about any corner of it. But I remember seeing one at Mount Paozu years ago. Do you remember the old hut I told you about? There might still be one there." Naruto could barely contain himself. "Can I go look for them, Dad? Please, 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 please," he begged, practically bouncing on his feet. Roshi chuckled at Naruto's enthusiasm. "How do you plan to find them, son? The world is a big place." Naruto's face fell for a moment as he realized he didn't actually have a plan. But then, a spark of determination ignited in his eyes. "I don't know, but I'll figure it out. I can do this, Dad. I know I can." Roshi watched Naruto carefully. Over the years, Naruto had grown stronger, much stronger than Roshi had ever anticipated. He had taught the boy everything he could, but there was a limit to what could be learned on their tiny island. The time had come for Naruto to explore the world, to face challenges, to gain experience and knowledge on his own. After a long pause, Roshi sighed and nodded. "All right, you can go." "Yes, yes, yes," Naruto cheered, leaping into the air with joy. But then Roshi raised a hand, and Naruto stopped mid-celebration. "But," Roshi added sternly, "you have to promise me you'll be careful. The world isn't always kind, Naruto. If you run into trouble, don't hesitate to call me." "Understood." Naruto nodded, his face serious now. "I promise, Dad." Roshi smiled softly. "Good. And take the Nimbus. It'll help in your travels." Naruto's face lit up again as he ran outside. "Ni imbuus SS," he yelled into the sky. A few moments later, a golden cloud zoomed toward him, stopping just above the ground. Naruto leapt onto it, looking back at Roshi with a wide grin. "I'll find all the Dragon Balls and make my wish, Dad. I'll be back soon." Roshi stood at the entrance of their home, watching his son hover on the Nimbus cloud, a mixture of pride and worry filling his chest. "Be careful out there, my boy," he called out, his voice carrying both love and concern. Naruto waved one last time before the Nimbus shot off into the sky, leaving the island behind. Roshi stood there for a long while, staring at the empty sky, wondering just what kind of adventure Naruto was about to embark on. His little boy was growing up, and the world was about to meet him. And Roshi knew that wherever Naruto went, trouble and excitement would surely follow. Naruto had flown on Nimbus for a few hours before finally reaching Mount Paozu. His heart raced with excitement, eager to find the next Dragon Ball. The vast forest and mountains stretched out before him, and Naruto immediately set out to search for the Dragon Ball. But as the hours dragged on, his excitement began to wane. He climbed the mountainside, dug through bushes, climbed trees, and even looked under large boulders, but there was no sign of the Dragon Ball. The sun had already begun to set. The sky turned hues of orange, signaling night was about to fall. Exhausted and frustrated, Naruto decided it would be best to rest and continue the search tomorrow. At the foot of the forest, there was a small, forgotten hut between the trees. His father had once mentioned it belonged to a student who had long since passed, and it had been abandoned for years. "Looks like I'll be staying here tonight," Naruto muttered to himself, walking toward the hut. As he entered, a thick layer of dust covered everything. The place looked like it hadn't been touched in ages. Naruto, not one to sleep in filth, set to work cleaning up. He swept away the dust, tidied the room, and as he moved a few boxes in the corner, something caught his eye, a glint of orange. Curious, he bent down to take a closer look. No way, Naruto whispered as he picked it up. As that, a Dragon Ball. Sure enough, the orange orb glowed in his hand, 4 red stars shining back at him. Who knew it was right here all along? Naruto grinned, as he secured the Dragon Ball in his bag. As the night fell, Naruto lay down on his bed made out of leaves, staring up at the wooden ceiling of the old hut. 2 down, only 5 more to go, he murmured with a smile. His adventure was looking bright, and he couldn't wait for tomorrow. The next morning, sunlight came through the windows, waking Naruto from his sleep. He stretched, feeling refreshed and ready for the day. After packing up, he stepped outside, taking in the morning beauty of Mount Paozu. The air was fresh, birds sang, and the forest swayed gently in the breeze. For a moment, Naruto simply enjoyed the scenery. Suddenly, his stomach growled, snapping him back to reality. "I need food," he muttered, clutching his belly. "Better get something to eat." Naruto grabbed a nearby axe and headed into the woods to gather firewood. A short while later, Naruto returned with a large tree stump slung over his shoulder. He set it down before launching it into the air. In a single swift motion, he leapt up, punched the stump, and shattered it into perfect pieces of firewood. He was pleased with his work. "That'll do." Just as he was about to head toward the river to fish, something strange caught his eye. The Dragon Balls in his bag started glowing, but only for a moment before dimming. "Huh, that's new. Dad never mentioned anything like that," Naruto muttered with a frown. But, for now, he shrugged it off and continued toward the river, intent on catching breakfast. Once he reached the water, Naruto sat on the riverbank and dipped his tail into the flowing river, a grin spreading across his face. "All right, come on, fishy," wiggling his tail slightly to attract his prey. He could see a large shadow moving closer under the water's surface, near his tail. In a flash, Naruto yanked his tail out of the water, and a massive car-sized blue fish leapt out, its jaws snapping. Without missing a beat, Naruto roundhouse kicked the fish mid-air, sending it flying into the boulder with a thunderous crash. Cracks appeared across the large stone where the fish landed. Naruto grinned as he stood over his prize. "Now that's what I call a fish." He hoisted the fish over his shoulder and began the return back to the hut. "This should last me until dinner." As Naruto approached the hut, he suddenly heard the distant roar of an engine. "Is that a hover car?" Naruto thought, narrowing his eyes as the noise grew louder. The road leading to the hut was rarely traveled, there shouldn't have been anyone around. "I thought no one lived here, what's going on?" The sound drew closer and closer, kicking up dust and debris. The car's engine roared aggressively, and soon enough, a heavy-duty off-roader hover vehicle raced toward Naruto's temporary home. His eyes filled with curiosity and caution. Who could this be? Finally, the car skidded to a stop in front of him, and the door swung open. Out stepped a blue-eyed, blue-haired girl. Naruto's breath caught in his throat. She was gorgeous. Her figure was nothing short of breathtaking, a fair-skinned girl with an hourglass-shaped body, with long, toned legs, a plump fat that practically defied gravity, and large C-cup that strained against the tight pink dress she wore. Her hair was styled in a braided ponytail tied with a red ribbon. The dress was so short that it barely covered below her, offering a teasing show of her bubble butt and long smooth, creamy legs. Naruto's eyes trailed over her body, unable to help himself. The way her wide hips swayed as she moved, the soft bounce of her perky chest with each step, it all sent a strange heat through his body. She is beautiful, Naruto thought, feeling his cheeks flush slightly. The blue-haired girl casually rested a hand on her hip, and Naruto noticed the outline of a gun strapped to her waist. But despite the weapon, her demeanor didn't seem hostile. She wasn't here for a fight. If she was, she would have tried to ambush him the moment she got out of the car. No, she had other intentions. Naruto regains his composure. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice steadier than he felt. Moments ago, Bulma drove along the rough dirt road, the roar of her engine echoing through the quiet wilderness. Her off-road hover car kicked up dust as it went toward its destination. She glanced down at her dragon radar, its yellow dots blinking. "Where is that Dragon Ball?" she muttered, eyes narrowing. The radar beeped, signaling that she was close. "It should be right around here somewhere, near that hut." As her car approached the old, dusty hut, and stopped, Bulma saw a figure outside. Her breath caught in her throat. The boy standing there was tall, with spiky reddish-brown hair. He looked about her age. My God, he's so handsome. Her heart fluttered as she took him in, from his well-defined muscles to his piercing dark eyes. Getting out of the car, she felt his gaze upon her. He asked her something but she was too busy checking him out. "He looks so dreamy, and he's looking right at me." Her cheeks flushed as she realized his gaze had locked onto her. Present time. Bulma took a deep breath, trying to compose herself. She had a mission to find the Dragon Balls, but with this handsome guy in front of her, it was hard to focus. "Hello," she said again, her voice slightly more confident, though her heart was pounding in her chest. She met Naruto's eyes and gave him a friendly smile. "It might seem weird for a city girl like me to be out in the middle of nowhere, but," she trailed off as she noticed his gaze shift toward the gun on her hip. "Oh crap," she thought. "He thinks I'm dangerous or something. Oh, this," she quickly added, gesturing to her weapon. "Don't worry, it's just for self-defense against wild animals. I'm not exactly strong enough to handle them on my own, as you can see." She smiled sheepishly, hoping to ease his concerns. Naruto, arms crossed, raised an eyebrow. "Please, don't worry about your gun," he said, his deep voice sending a shiver down her spine. "That's not why I'm suspicious. It's just strange to see someone like you out here alone." Quote, "Oh my God, even his voice is sexy," Bulma thought, nearly swooning. His commanding tone only made her pulse quicken. "Stay cool, Bulma. Don't make a fool of yourself. So, what's a city girl like you doing all the way out here?" Naruto asked, his eyes narrowing at her. Bulma blinked, caught off guard for a moment. Well, I'm looking for something." She clutched her radar tighter, not wanting to reveal her true purpose just yet. Suddenly, Naruto's stomach growled loudly, breaking the tension. He looked a little embarrassed, scratching the back of his head. "Hey, sorry about that," Naruto chuckled. "I haven't eaten yet. How about this? You can tell me all about why you're here over breakfast." He gestured toward the massive fish he had caught earlier, lifting it with ease over his shoulder. "Come on, I'll cook." Bulma stared at the enormous fish in awe. What the hell? Did he punch a hole in a mountain to catch that thing? She thought, trying to keep her composure as she followed him. As they walked, she glanced down at her radar. The blip indicated the Dragon Ball was close, closer than she had expected. "It's here, in his hut, maybe," she realized. As they walked, Naruto turned to her. "By the way, my name's Naruto. What's yours?" Bulma hesitated for a second. Should she give him her full name? She wasn't sure if he'd react, but then again, she didn't like the idea of leaving the hunk of a boy hanging. My name." She paused, then smiled. "Bulma." Bulma Ino. Brief. The moment Naruto heard the name, Ino, his eyes widened slightly. A flood of images flashed through his mind, images of a blonde-haired girl, her striking blue eyes, and a soft voice whispering, "Sensei, I love you." His heart skipped a beat. What the hell was that? He thought, stunned by the strange visions. Hey, are you okay? Bulma's voice snapped him out of his trance. She was standing in front of him, her head tilted in concern. You kind of froze there for a second. Naruto blinked, shaking his head as if to clear his mind. Oh, sorry about that, he said with an awkward laugh. I just got lost in thought for a moment. He gave her a reassuring smile, but his mind was still racing. What was that? That girl, Ino. He couldn't make sense of it, but for now, he pushed the thoughts aside. He had more pressing matters, like the beautiful girl standing in front of him. His lips curved into a smirk. Bulma. Huh, that's kind of a funny name. Bulma, not missing a beat, shot back. Oh yeah, well, what about you, Mr. Fishcake? Naruto's brow twitched as he playfully glared at her. My name, Naruto, means maelstrom, not fishcake they put in ramen. Bulma laughed, a mischievous look in her eye. Right, maelstrom, sure, we'll go with that, Mr. Fishcake. Naruto couldn't help but chuckle along with her. She's got spirit. I like that, he thought, glancing at her again. But even as they shared this playful banter, Naruto couldn't ignore the way Bulma's short dress clung to her body, showing her developing curves. His gaze lingered on her legs, her hips swaying as she walked beside him. She was very attractive, and the playful smirk on her face only made it harder for him to look away. As they neared the hut, Bulma's eyes darted toward his back. For some reason he felt oddly familiar. Why am I feeling like I know him from somewhere? After a while, the rich aroma of roasted fish filled the air as Naruto carefully turned the large ketch over the campfire. The skin crackled, juices sizzling as the meal neared completion. Bulma sat nearby, her eyes flicking between the fish and Naruto, trying to push back the strange sense of familiarity she suddenly felt around him. There was something about him, something that made her feel like she could trust him, even though they had only just met. So, Naruto asked, breaking the silence, what are you really doing out here anyway? Bulma hesitated for a moment. She wasn't the type to reveal her mission to just anyone, but something inside her urged her to trust him. It was like she'd known him for longer than just these few moments. I'm looking for something called Dragon Balls, she admitted, watching his reaction closely. Why does it feel so easy, to be honest with him? Naruto's eyes widened slightly. She's looking for the Dragon Balls too, he thought, surprised but not displeased. So, do you live around here, Naruto? Bulma asked, trying to make casual conversation while her mind spun with thoughts of the Dragon Balls and this mysterious handsome boy. No, he replied, tossing another log onto the fire, I'm here looking for the same thing you are. He glanced at her, his expression teasing. Funny coincidence, huh? Bulma blinked, her mouth parting slightly in shock. You're looking for Dragon Balls too? She asked, genuinely surprised. What are the chances? Naruto nodded, standing up and tearing off a large chunk of the perfectly cooked fish, handing a generous portion to Bulma. Yup, I've already got 2 of them, he said, grinning as he took a seat beside her. Bulma took the piece of fish and bit into it, the flavors melting in her mouth. She moaned softly, savoring the taste. This is so good, Naruto. Naruto chuckled, watching her enjoy the meal. Glad you like it. Between bites, Bulma glanced at him. So, did you find any other Dragon Balls yet? She asked. Naruto nodded. Yeah, like I said, I've got only 2 of them. What about you? Bulma smiled, wiping her mouth. I've got 2 as well. Looks like we're evenly matched. She reached into her bag, pulling out her Dragon Balls to show him. Naruto's eyes flickered with interest as her Dragon Balls began to glow, reacting to his. Hey, he said suddenly, do your Dragon Balls glow sometimes? Bulma nodded, her eyes widening as she noticed the soft golden light. Yeah, yours are reacting to mine. She held her Dragon Balls up, watching them pulse with a faint glow. Look, Naruto smiled, standing up. Come inside, I'll show you my Dragon Balls. He started toward the hut, and Bulma quickly followed, her heart racing a little faster than it should have been. Why am I getting all excited? She wondered, trying to focus on the mission. Inside the small hut, Naruto opened his small bag and pulled out his 2 Dragon Balls, setting them on the table next to Bulma's. All 4 of them glowed brightly, lighting up the room. Bulma's eyes gleamed with excitement. Hey, Naruto, she said, an idea forming in her mind. Why don't we team up? We could be partners, and work together to find the rest of the Dragon Balls. What do you say? She flashed him a playful smile, hoping he would agree. Naruto grinned. Partners, huh, I like the sound of that. That way we can both get our wishes, he said. He reached out to shake her hand, sealing the deal. Well, then, it's time to set out on our exciting adventure. Bulma exclaimed as they headed back outside. Her heart raced at the thought of traveling with Naruto and hunting down the Dragon Balls. Naruto stopped in his tracks, a thoughtful expression crossing his face. But Bulma, how do we even know where to start looking? The Dragon Balls could be anywhere in the world. Bulma chuckled, pulling out her Dragon Radar, her secret weapon. That's where my genius comes in, she said proudly, holding it up for him to see. This little beauty tracks the Dragon Balls wherever they are. She pointed at the glowing dots on the screen. See, these 4 dots are the ones we have, and these others are the remaining Dragon Balls. The closest one is about 1,200 kilometers to the west. Naruto raised an eyebrow, curious about her next move. So what's the plan? Bulma grinned mischievously, pulling out one of her capsules. With a quick flick of her wrist, she tossed it onto the ground. Poof! In an instant, a motorcycle appeared in a cloud of smoke. Ta-da! This is how we're going to travel, she said, hopping onto the bike and starting the engine. Naruto blinked in surprise but quickly smiled. Well, all right then, he said, stepping up to the bike. Should I call Nimbus? He wondered for a brief moment, but as he glanced at Bulma, her body leaning forward on the bike, curves perfectly hugged by her tight clothes, and skirt hiked up showing her panty-clad fat. He quickly discarded the idea. Why call Nimbus when a hot girl is offering me a ride? Naruto swung his leg over the bike, seating himself behind Bulma. As she revved the engine again, he placed his hands on her waist to steady himself and hugged her tightly from behind. The feel of her soft curves beneath his fingers made his pulse quicken. Damn, she's got a body. Bulma blushed fiercely, as Naruto's strong, muscular arms wrapped around her. She could feel his body heat, his muscular chest against her back, and his firm grip sent a shiver down her spine. My God, he's so muscular, she thought, her mind racing. I can feel every inch of him. She swallowed hard, her cheeks flushing even deeper. Bulma, Naruto asked, his voice low and husky in her ear. Are we going? His voice snapped her out of her thoughts, and she quickly straightened up, trying to compose herself. Why yeah, let's go, she said, kicking the bike into gear. As they sped off down the dirt road, Bulma's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. She could hardly keep her mind off of Naruto's muscular form pressed against her back, his hands gripping her waist a little tighter as they gained speed. This adventure just got a whole lot more interesting. They thought, a mischievous smile playing on their lips. A few hours had passed when Bulma suddenly brought the bike to a halt. Naruto looked at her, confused. What's wrong? Why'd we stop? Bulma sighed, running her hand through her hair. I need to make a pit stop. Stay here, she said, hopping off the bike and running off behind a large boulder. Naruto stayed behind, leaning against the bike, waiting for her to return. His mind wandered, but before he could get too lost in his thoughts, a scream pierced the air. Naruto, come here, quick. Without hesitation, Naruto bolted towards the source of the voice. Rounding the boulder, his eyes widened as he saw Bulma struggling in the claws of a large pterodactyl, its leathery wings flapping menacingly. Who are you? The creature growled, eyeing Naruto with its sharp beak. Naruto's expression hardened, stepping closer. I'm Naruto, and you'd better put her down. Now, he commanded the creature. The pterodactyl let out a mocking laugh. And what if I don't? What are you gonna do? Huh, boy. It taunted, clearly underestimating him. In a blur of movement, Naruto leapt high into the air. He landed a swift, powerful chop between its shoulder blades. The pterodactyl screeched in pain and collapsed to the ground, probably dead, releasing Bulma from its grasp. Before she could fall, Naruto caught her in a bridal style, holding her gently in his arms. Bulma blinked up at him, her breath catching in her throat as she realized what had just happened. You saved me, Naruto, she whispered, her heart still racing from the encounter. She leaned up and planted a soft kiss on his cheek, causing him to blush. Thank you. Naruto rubbed the back of his neck sheepishly, trying to play it off. It was nothing. I'm a martial artist, after all, he said, flashing her a grin. Bulma's eyes sparkled with admiration. Wow, I didn't know you were that strong. I feel a lot safer with you around. Naruto chuckled, feeling a little embarrassed by the praise. Glad to be of help. They both climbed back onto the motorcycle and continued their journey, the mood between them noticeably lighter now. However, as the hours passed and the sun began to set, casting an orange glow over the horizon, Bulma slowed the bike once more. Looks like it's getting dark, Naruto commented as they came to a stop. Are we camping out here for the night? Bulma shook her head, a smirk appeared on her lips. No need to camp. Remember, I've got my capsules. She pulled out one of the small capsules from her bag and tossed it a few feet away. With a loud poof, the capsule turned into a small, fully equipped house. Naruto's eyes widened in awe. Wow, that's amazing, he said, clearly impressed. Bulma smiled smugly. Yep, one of the perks of being a genius inventor. She motioned for him to follow her inside, and Naruto, still marveling at the technology, stepped in after her. The inside of the capsule house was surprisingly spacious, with all the necessities they could need for the night. There was a cozy living area, a small kitchen, and a bedroom. Naruto looked around, taking in the comfortable surroundings. This is really cool, Bulma, Naruto said, turning to her with a smile. You're full of surprises. Bulma grinned, pleased with his reaction. Stick with me, Naruto, and you'll see plenty more. Naruto stepped out of the bathroom, a towel slung low around his waist, droplets of water still clinging to his toned, muscular body. His skin gleamed under the soft light of the capsule house, and his abs flexed with every movement. He ran a hand through his damp hair, glancing at Bulma. You can take your shower now, Bulma, he said casually. Bulma turned to face him, her eyes widening as she caught sight of his nearly form. Her gaze was drawn to the defined muscles of his chest, then lower, to the barely secured towel that hung around his hips. Her heart raced, and her face flushed a deep shade of red. My God, he's so perfect, she thought, her eyes drinking the sight of his physique longer than she intended. Bulma, are you okay? Naruto asked, acting innocent while a smirk tugged at the corners of his lips. He knew exactly what effect he was having on her. Just as she was about to answer, the towel around Naruto's waist slipped and fell to the floor, leaving him completely exposed. Bulma's eyes went wide, her breath catching in her throat as she stared at him, unable to look away. Her face turned even redder as she took in the sight of his thick, large. She could feel the heat rising inside her, her body reacting in ways she hadn't expected. "Oh my God," Bulma stammered, quickly turning on her heel and dashing into the bathroom. "I'll be in the shower," she shouted over her shoulder, her voice trembling. Naruto chuckled softly to himself, watching her scurry away. "She's cute when she's flustered," he thought, bending down to pick up his towel before tossing it aside. Although he didn't plan to drop his towel, but he enjoyed seeing Bulma's reaction and was curious about what would come next. Inside the bathroom, Bulma leaned against the door, her chest heaving. "Get a hold of yourself, Bulma," she muttered. She couldn't get the image of Naruto's body out of her mind, and the more she tried, the harder it became. "He's so big. How is that even possible?" she thought, biting her lip. She could feel her body responding to the thought of him, heat rising between her legs. "I need a cold shower now," she said to herself, quickly turning on the water and stepping under the rain of cold water. But even the cold water did little to cool her down. Her mind kept drifting back to Naruto, his muscles, his smile, and the way he looked at her like he knew exactly what he was doing to her. After what felt like an eternity, Bulma finally stepped out of the shower. She dried herself off and reached for the outfit, a black skimpy bra and matching panties. They clung to her body in all the right places, barely hiding her assets. She looked at herself in the mirror, giving a playful twirl as her bubble butt jiggled. "Wait until he sees me in this," she giggled, her confidence returning as she imagined Naruto's reaction. She had no intention of letting the night end without getting back at him for the earlier stunt he pulled. She opened the door and stepped out, her near-sexy body on full display. "Naruto, I'm done," she called out, her voice dripping with playfulness. Naruto looked up from where he sat, now wearing only a pair of boxers. His eyes roamed over her body, taking in the sight of her in the skimpy attire. The way the black bra hugged her beasts, the way the panties barely covered her, it was enough to send a shiver down his spine. "Bulma," Naruto's gaze locked with hers. "You're looking sexy." His words hung in the air, thick with desire. Bulma blushed, but she held her ground, her lips curling into a seductive smile. She walked slowly toward him, swaying her hips just enough to keep his eyes glued to her. "Oh, you think so?" she teased, standing in front of him now. "You know, you're quite handsome too, Naruto," she teased, her gaze lingering on his well-toned body. Naruto chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck bashfully, but before he could respond, Bulma's eyes suddenly widened as she noticed something moving behind him. "Wait, what's that behind you?" she asked in curiosity. Naruto raised an eyebrow. "Huh," he said, glancing over his shoulder as Bulma stood up and walked behind him. Without warning, she grabbed something soft and firm, giving it a little tug. "Is that a tail?" Bulma exclaimed, her eyes wide with wonder as she continued to hold it. "Yeah," Naruto replied, wiggling it in her hand with ease. "I was born with it." He always wrapped his tail around his waist, making it look like a belt. No wonder she was surprised to see it. Bulma's eyes lit up with fascination. "Whoa, I've never seen a boy with a tail before." She grinned as she gently rubbed the tail, still marveling at the sight. Naruto just chuckled at her reaction. "Well, now you have," he said, grinning playfully. After a few more moments of playful curiosity, Naruto's stomach growled loudly, breaking the moment. He rubbed his belly sheepishly. "Speaking of surprises, do you have any food, Bulma?" "I'm starving." Bulma laughed softly. "Yeah, I've got plenty. Stay here, I'll grab something for us." A few moments later, the two of them sat together, digging into a small feast. Between bites of food, Naruto looked at her and said, "You know, Bulma, we don't really know much about each other beyond our names. Tell me something about yourself." Bulma wiped her mouth and smiled. "Well, I'm Bulma Ino Brief. I'm 16 years old, and I'm the one and only daughter of Dr. Brief, the founder of Capsule Corporation. I like pudding and my favorite color is purple. I'm also a genius scientist and inventor." She added the last part with a proud smirk. Naruto smiled. "That's pretty impressive. What about you, Naruto?" she asked, turning the conversation toward him. "Well, you already know my name," Naruto began, pausing to take a bite of food. "I'm 13 years old. I'm a martial artist, and my dad is Master Roshi, who's also a martial artist. I love the color orange. My favorite food is miso ramen and my dream is to become the strongest man in the world." Bulma nearly choked on her food. "What? You're 13? I thought you were the same age as me," she said in shock, staring at him. Naruto just laughed, his signature playful grin returning. "Yeah, I get that a lot. I guess I'm just awesome like that." He winked at her. "So, what are you going to wish for when we find all the Dragon Balls?" "My father died recently from a disease," Bulma said softly, her voice tinged with sadness. "That's why I'm searching for the Dragon Balls. I just want to bring him back to life." Her usual confident tone was missing as she spoke, the sadness of her loss present in her expression. Naruto's face softened as he listened. "I'm sorry, Bulma, I didn't know," he said quietly. "What about you, Naruto?" Bulma asked. "What are you going to wish for when we find all the Dragon Balls?" Naruto's expression grew thoughtful. "I just want to know more about my origins, about my race." Bulma's brow furrowed. "Your origins? Race? What do you mean?" Naruto's face turned serious, and his tone shifted. "What I'm about to tell you is a secret, Bulma. You can't tell anyone, okay?" She nodded, curiosity written all over her face. "I promise," she whispered. Naruto took a deep breath. "I'm not from this planet. My dad is actually my adoptive father who found me as a baby, and that's how I ended up here. But I don't know where I came from, or what I really am. That's why I want to find the Dragon Balls, to find out the truth about my past." Bulma's jaw dropped. You're an alien," she exclaimed, her finger pointed directly at him, her voice full of disbelief. Naruto nodded. "Yeah," he said calmly, watching her reaction. Are you serious?" The blue-haired girl looked at him suspiciously. Naruto confirmed again that he was an actual alien. But still, to confirm his claim that he was an alien, she got up. "Wait here, a little." She ran to the next room, making him confused a little, but she quickly returned with a small device. "Here, give me your hand." The young Saiyan did what he was asked as she used the device to get a single drop of his blood and pushed some buttons and waited. "What is that device?" Naruto was curious. A moment later she looked away from the device to Naruto. "You really are an alien. My device can't match your DNA to any species on Earth." Bulma's shock quickly turned into excitement. "That's incredible. An actual alien. I've never met anyone like you." She was practically bouncing in her seat, her eyes gleaming with fascination. Naruto chuckled, his heart warming at her enthusiasm. "Well, I'm glad you think it's cool," he said, grinning. "So, I am guessing you have questions for me." Bulma eagerly nodded her head like a child wanting candy. They talked for hours, both teens answering each other's questions, getting to know each other much better. The excitement of the conversation eventually died down as it was getting late and they started feeling sleepy. "We should probably get some sleep," Naruto suggested, stretching his arms. "We have a long day ahead of us tomorrow." Bulma glanced at the bed, then at Naruto. "I'll take the couch," Naruto offered, starting to gather a pillow and blanket. Bulma shook her head. "No, Naruto, You can sleep in the bed with me. It's big enough for both of us, she said with a blushing face, her voice soft but inviting. Naruto blinked, surprised. Are you sure? He asked, not wanting to make her uncomfortable. Bulma nodded, already climbing into bed. Yeah, I don't mind. Come on, it's more comfortable than the floor. Naruto climbed into the bed beside her. As he settled in, he could feel the warmth of her body next to his. A part of him wanted to wrap his arms around her, but he just settled close to her. Good night, Bulma, Naruto said, his voice soft. Good night, Naruto, she whispered back, her face still a little flushed from everything that had happened earlier. She closed her eyes, but her mind was racing, thinking about the boy beside her, the boy who was not only handsome and dreamy but also an alien. Soon the two of them drifted off to sleep. The next morning, sunlight slowly filled the room, gently waking the young blue-haired girl lying in the bed. Bulma stirred, her blue eyes slowly opened as she began to stretch. As she adjusted, her heart skipped a beat when she felt Naruto snuggled up behind her, his muscular arm wrapped over her body. But it wasn't just that. She felt something firm pressing against her. Her cheeks flushed deep red, faster than she could process. Curiously she moved her hand to her lower back, only to feel something warm and hard, Naruto's morning wood. Her breath hitched, her mind racing in a flurry of embarrassment and curiosity. She turned her head slightly, confirming what she already suspected. The sight made her entire face burn with heat. At that moment, Naruto yawned and stretched, unaware of her inner turmoil. Morning, Bulma, he said casually as if nothing was out of the ordinary. He got up from the bed, stretching his arms above his head. His well-toned body was fully on display, muscles rippling beneath his skin. Bulma, trying to calm her racing heart, forced a smile. Morning, Naruto, she replied, her voice shaky as she quickly slipped out of bed and headed to the bathroom. Once inside, she leaned against the bathroom wall, staring at herself in the mirror, her face still flushed. What is happening to me? Why am I feeling like this? Am I falling for him? But why does it feel so right? She thought, trying to shake off the strange attraction that had been building up inside her. After taking a deep breath, she splashed water on her face. Get a hold of yourself, Bulma, she scolded herself silently before getting ready for the day. A little while later, the two finished their breakfast and prepared to continue their journey. Bulma had dressed in a stylish adventurer's outfit, brown booty shorts, red and white shoes, pink socks, a red jacket over a white shirt, and a red hat with her name on it. Naruto looked at her new appearance. You're looking good, Bulma, he complimented, his eyes momentarily scanning her figure, especially her well-shaped behind. Bulma blushed lightly, though she masked it with a confident smile. Thanks, Naruto, she said, a bit flustered by his comment. All right, let's keep going. With that, the two hopped onto the bike, Naruto settling in behind her, his arms once again wrapped around her waist as they sped off toward the western valley. As they neared their destination, Naruto pointed ahead. Look over there, Bulma. There's a village down the road. Bulma nodded, pulling out the dragon radar. Good eye, Naruto, she said, checking the screen. Looks like the fifth Dragon Ball is somewhere in this village. However, as they rode into the village, something felt off. The streets were empty, with no signs of life anywhere. The buildings seemed deserted. The radar indicated the Dragon Ball was close by. It's so quiet. Too quiet, Bulma muttered, looking around uneasily. Do you think the village is abandoned? Naruto narrowed his eyes. No, people are here. I can sense them, he said, scanning the surroundings. But they're hiding. Something must have scared them. Bulma frowned, checking the dragon radar again. Well, the radar says the Dragon Ball is definitely here. But why would everyone be hiding? Naruto marched up to one of the houses and knocked on the door. Hey, I know you're in there. Why won't you answer? He called out. Bulma walked up beside him, noticing the door was locked from the inside. Looks like they've barricaded themselves, she observed. Suddenly, Naruto decided, and with a swift kick, he broke the door open, sending it flying off its hinges. Sorry about that, he muttered, stepping inside. As soon as they entered, a figure lunged at Naruto, swinging an axe toward his head. Bulma gasped, her heart leaping into her throat, but Naruto was faster. In an instant, he caught the axe with one hand, the blade stopping inches from his face. With a sharp twist of his wrist, he shattered the weapon into pieces, sending shards of metal to the floor. Calm down. We're not here to hurt anyone, Naruto said firmly, his voice low but commanding. The attacker, a terrified villager, stared at him wide-eyed. Bulma, still recovering from the shock, stepped forward. What's going on here? Why are you all hiding? She asked. Her tone was softer to calm down the terrified villager. Naruto glanced at her, and then back at the villager. And more importantly, why are you attacking us? The man trembled as he held his head in his hands. I guess it was useless after all, he mumbled, his voice trembling with fear. I'm so sorry, Lord Oolong. I'll give you as much money and food as you want, just please don't take my daughter. Both Naruto and Bulma shared a confused glance, blinking at the man's desperate plea. Naruto tilted his head, scratching the back of it awkwardly. I think you got the wrong guy. I'm Naruto, not Oolong. At that, the villagers began to emerge from their homes, cautiously approaching Naruto and Bulma. They all began to explain their situation, talking over one another in panic. The name, Oolong, kept coming up, a demon who terrorized their village, demanding tributes of food and, more horrifically, young girls. After hearing the full story, Naruto's expression hardened. We'll help you. Don't worry, he said, his deep voice filled the villagers with hope. One of the villagers, still a bit wary, looked at Bulma and Naruto suspiciously. But why have you come here? What do you want from us? He asked cautiously. Bulma smiled slightly, deciding to ease their suspicion. She reached into her bag and pulled out a Dragon Ball, holding it up for everyone to see. We're looking for something like this, she explained. Does anyone here own a ball like this? The villagers exchanged uncertain glances until an old woman in the back slowly stepped forward. I have one just like that, she said, her voice shaky, revealing a Dragon Ball in her hand. However, she clutched it close to her chest, unwilling to part with it. But, I don't want to give it away. Naruto stepped forward with a reassuring smile. I understand, ma'am, but if you give it to us, I promise to defeat this Oolong demon and protect your village. No one will have to live in fear again. The old woman hesitated for a moment, looking into Naruto's eyes. After seeing the sincerity and strength there, she nodded slowly. Young man, if you can really stop Oolong, you can have it. Naruto grinned and gave her a thumbs up. Deal. Now let's make a plan to trap this Oolong. A few minutes later, Bulma walked out of one of the village houses wearing a traditional village girl's outfit, a plain dress with a bonnet. She crossed her arms and frowned, clearly displeased. Why do I have to wear this? She asked, her voice filled with annoyance. Naruto chuckled a bit, trying not to laugh at how grumpy she looked. Because you're the bait, obviously. Oolong only takes young girls, right? So, you'll pretend to be one of the village girls, and when he shows up, I'll follow him to his base and beat him up. Then we can save the other girls he's kidnapped. Bulma glared at him, her hands tightening into fists. You're really making me the bait. You better protect me. Naruto's face grew serious as he looked into her eyes, his voice low but filled with confidence. Bulma, I swear, I'll protect you with my life. That's a promise of a lifetime. He placed a hand on her shoulder, reassuring her of her safety. Bulma felt her heart beat faster, his voice surprising her. She felt safe but didn't know why she was feeling this way. Her earlier frustration faded as she nodded, trusting him. All right. But don't let me down, Naruto. Naruto grinned brightly again. You got it. Suddenly, the ground beneath them shook violently. Huh, what's happening? Bulma asked, holding onto Naruto to keep her balance. Naruto narrowed his eyes, sensing a presence. It's Oolong. He's coming. Panic erupted throughout the village. The villagers screamed and ran, frantically retreating into their homes. In the distance, a massive figure appeared, a red demonic-looking giant Oni with sharp horns protruding from his head. He wore an ill-fitting white tuxedo as if mocking formal attire. I've come for you, my sweetie pie. Oolong howled, his voice booming across the village. His demonic grotesque smile stretched wide, eyes locking for his bride. Bulma's heart raced in her chest, fear creeping up her spine. She gulped, feeling herself freeze, but then Naruto's calm, reassuring voice reached her. Okay, Bulma, do your part. I believe in you. His words, spoken with such confidence, made something click inside her. Despite the fear, she straightened her posture and nodded. Naruto's belief in her gave her the strength she didn't know she had. Oolong walked confidently, completely unaware of the trap that awaited him. The moment his eyes laid upon his new victim, he fell in love. He bent down and scooped Bulma up with one hand, holding her like a prize. Bulma's body tensed. I've got you now, my lovely bride-to-be. Oolong grinned as he began to carry her away to his palace, all while confessing his lust and desire for her body. Just as he reached the steps of his palace, a deep voice cut through the air. Stop right there, Oolong. Naruto's voice was stern and commanding. He stepped out from the shadows, his fists clenched. Let go of the girl, right now. Oolong turned around, eyes wide. Who are you, brat? His deep, mocking laughter echoed in the air. Naruto, help me, Bulma screamed, her voice shaking as she tried to play along. Naruto's eyes never left Oolong's. I said, let her go, he repeated, his voice cold. Oolong raised an eyebrow, his face twisting into an arrogant smirk. Oh yeah, what are you gonna do if I don't, little boy? His mocking tone filled the air as he tightened his grip on Bulma. Naruto's eyes sharpened. Without warning, Naruto dashed forward at lightning speed, delivering a devastating punch straight to Oolong's face. The giant pig demon didn't even have time to react. With a sickening thud, his body flew backward, and everything went dark for him. Naruto stood over Oolong's unconscious form. He blinked in surprise as Oolong's massive frame began to shrink, eventually transforming into a small, regular-looking pig in a tuxedo. Huh, it's just a pig, Naruto said, scratching his head in confusion. Before he could fully process the transformation, Bulma bolted toward him, throwing her arms around him. You saved me, she cried out, relief washing over her as she pressed her lips against his in a hungry kiss. Naruto's eyes widened in shock, his body stiffening for a moment. But then, as her lips lingered on him, he found himself instinctively returning the kiss. The warmth of it took him by surprise, but it felt right. Suddenly, Bulma's mind caught up with her actions, and she quickly pulled back, her face burning with embarrassment. I didn't mean, she stammered, turning away from Naruto, her heart pounding in her chest. But Naruto wasn't done. He gently took her by the shoulders, turning her back around to face him. His dark eyes locked onto her blue eyes, and without hesitation, he leaned in, closing the gap between them once more. This time, the kiss was deliberate, filled with unknown emotion and passion. Bulma's breath hitched, but she didn't pull away. Instead, she found herself melting into the kiss, letting go of her fears and enjoying the moment. When they finally parted, her mind was in a daze. Naruto, she whispered dreamily, lost in the afterglow. Before either of them could say anything more, the sound of footsteps approached. The villagers had gathered around them, their faces filled with awe and confusion. "What happened here?" one of the old men asked, breaking the silence. Naruto reluctantly let go of Bulma, turning to address the crowd. "I defeated Oolong," he said, pointing to the small pig still lying unconscious on the ground. The villagers gasped in unison. "Huh, it's just a pig," they all said, echoing Naruto's earlier surprise. As if on cue, Oolong began to stir, his small body trembling as he regained consciousness. His eyes looked around nervously, and upon seeing the angry mob surrounding him, he cowered in fear. Please don't hurt me," Oolong squealed like a pig he was. "This is the real Oolong." Naruto leaned in closer to the trembling pig. "Now, where are the rest of the girls you kidnapped? Tell us, now," Oolong gulped, nodding frantically. "They're inside my palace. I didn't hurt them, I swear." Bulma crossed her arms, glaring at the small pig. "Then you're going to take us inside your home right now." Inside Oolong's palace, Naruto and Bulma found the kidnapped girls lounging comfortably, treating the place more like a luxury resort than a prison. They were draped in fine clothes, demanding extravagant meals and more gifts from the overwhelmed pig. "I just wanted a nice, quiet girl," Oolong groaned in frustration. "But these girls, they just want more and more. Please, take them away," he begged, practically on his knees. Bulma and Naruto exchanged a glance, bursting into laughter at the ridiculousness of the situation. Even the villagers couldn't help but chuckle at the sight of the once feared demon reduced to a groveling mess. After everything had been settled, the old woman from earlier approached Naruto with a smile. "As promised, here's the Dragon Ball." She handed it over with gratitude in her eyes. Naruto took it, holding it up to the light. "Yes, we got the Dragon Ball," he cheered, his excitement contagious as Bulma joined in, both of them laughing and celebrating their victory. As the night settled over the village, the joyous atmosphere from earlier lingered, but now, things felt more intimate. Naruto and Bulma decided to stay the night in the village, their excitement still buzzing from the day's events. The old man, grateful for their help, offered them a room. The room was dimly lit by the soft glow of the moonlight through the window. Inside, everything was still and quiet, the air mixed with a mix of nervousness and anticipation. Bulma lay on the bed, her body covered only by a daring bra and panties, her heart racing in her chest as she glanced over at Naruto. He was beside her, wearing only his boxers, his toned muscular body visible in the soft moonlight. There was something electric between them, a tension that made the air feel thick and warm. Naruto smiled gently. He liked her a lot. He couldn't quite explain it, but something about Bulma had drawn him in from the start. He moved closer, his hand sliding behind her shoulder, his touch gentle yet firm. He let his other hand weave into her hair, slipping through his fingers. Bulma shivered at his touch, her breath hitching. But as Naruto wrapped her in his arms, pulling her into a full embrace, the nervousness melted away. Without even thinking, she hugged him back, pressing her body against his. Her head rested on his shoulder. Naruto felt her relax in his arms, and it filled him with quiet confidence. He pulled away slightly, just enough to cup her face with one hand, his thumb brushing against her lips. His heart was pounding, but there was no hesitation. Slowly, he leaned down, his lips brushing lightly against her lips. Bulma's heart nearly stopped. She could feel his warm breath on her lips. His lips captured hers. When their lips finally met, it felt like the world outside disappeared. She held still, savoring the moment, wanting to make it last forever, but slowly she responded by gently pulling on his lower lip. Naruto broke the kiss, pulling back slightly. Bulma's eyes widened in worry. He leaned in again, kissing her, this time more boldly. His tongue flicked against her lips, teasing her, asking for more. Bulma parted her lips, as their tongues met and deepened the kiss, his body pressing closer to hers, the heat between them growing. The kiss became more passionate, their bodies moving instinctively. Bulma's hand slipped around his waist, pulling him closer as Naruto's hands roamed her body. He caressed her back, fingers tracing down her spine until they found her. He gave it a gentle squeeze, drawing a soft gasp from Bulma. "Naruto," Bulma whispered, her voice shaky but filled with emotion. I love you." She hesitated for a moment, unsure if it was too soon to say something so big. "I don't know why, but it feels like we're meant to be together. Like fate. I know we just met, but I can't shake this feeling, this connection." Naruto felt the same. He didn't understand it fully, but ever since he had met Bulma, something had clicked. "I don't know much about fate," he admitted, his voice soft and low, "but I feel it too. Like I've known you for longer than just today, like there's something more between us." He paused, his thumb brushing her lower lip. "I like you a lot, Bulma." Bulma's heart swelled at his words. She smiled, her lips trembling as she leaned in and kissed him again, this time softer, more passionate. The kiss was filled with unspoken promises and the warmth of new love. As they kissed, Naruto's hands roamed lower, finding her again, squeezing gently. "I guess this means we're dating now, huh?" Naruto asked with a playful grin, his hands still lingering on her hips. Bulma, her cheeks flushed with a mix of arousal and happiness, nodded eagerly. She hummed, a soft giggle escaping her lips. With that, they dove back into another kiss, this one even more heated. Their bodies pressed closer, hands exploring, touching, caressing. The moonlight only seemed to heighten their senses, every touch, every breath, every kiss sending waves of pleasure coursing through them.